What's up, guys?
Hey.
Welcome back.
Oh,
Welcome.
I thought you were talking to me.
Oh, I am. What's up?
Crowd.
Let's just do something different. What's up, Tyler?
Not too much. What's up with you?
Not much. Just hopping on this podcast with a bunch of good-looking dudes.
Oh, that's right. What time is it? Oh, it's
It is
podcast time.
Modern Craftsman Monday.
So they're
Recorded on
successful
Tuesdays.
and they're good looking. I'm turning this off.
Sounds like a
Please.
bunch of
Please do.
hubbub to me.
Yep.
Hub? What's
I'll
the
smoke.
hubbub? Guys, there's so much in this podcast episode that we've created a new T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bob Borson.
It might
We have-
actually be my favorite podcast.
This one's good.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Let's just leave it there. Let's get into it. Brought to you by Duration Mold and Millwork. No lead time issues and no price increases. How many products can say that about this crazy year? The folks at Duration know and understand that availability of product is more important than ever for builders and remodelers. That's why they maintain deep inventories of standard products, produce semi-custom products in less than a week, and fabricate completely custom products in just 2 weeks. To learn more about Duration Polyash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com.
.com.
I was going to say.
11 years ago, you started this Life of an Architect website because something that you said that resonated with me was that you felt like you were getting really good at what you did every day. And I think what I understood by that is that, you were basically doing the same thing every day. So you were getting really good at it, which is an interesting perspective to think about when you think like the goal is to get really good at something. But it's almost if you're constantly challenged and you're never able to kind of perfect something, and you're always pushing yourself to do something better or more challenging, then is it that you actually don't want to become really good at something? You just want to constantly push yourself to be, doing as good as you can, but I guess never achieving actual perfection or the best in the best for that particular role.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to the whole, there's a couple of ways to put it. Inch wide, mile deep. That came out weird. Inch wide, mile deep, or mile wide, inch deep. Like, are you the jack of all trades or master of none person? And it really has to do for architects, people who do what I do for a living. If you're in a small firm, you are pushed into the role where you kind of have to know how to do everything. You need to be able to design, you got to draw, you got to be able to go in the field and talk to contractors and their subcontractors and not be a jerk and be able to like listen and understand like what they bring to the mix, all these sorts of things. If you work in a big firm, what they really want is they want to kind of divide and conquer. They want people to be really good at a certain bandwidth of topics so that you can say, we've got experts that can deal with all these things. And I can just migrate you from point A to point B, and you've got an expert in whatever needs to be done. So in my firm from a couple of years ago, when there were 11 of us at the most, everybody was a heat-seeking missile of just getting stuff done. Like, it didn't matter what it was. I could put anybody on anything, and they could get it pretty far along without stepping in it. The firm where, I'm a principal now has 100 people in it, and people are siloed into project designers and project architects and project managers and construction administrators. I mean, everybody's kind of got a role to play, and it creates some challenges sometimes because I've got designers designing buildings, but they don't understand sometimes how codes work or like how flashing works or construction tolerance. Like, that's something that I talk about with people all the time. Like, if you're going to design something, you got to give the contractor a chance to like build it in a way that doesn't demand perfection, right? It's nice to shoot for it, but I can't design something where the only way it works is you have to flawlessly execute every 10,000 things that I've been asking you to do. So sometimes there's kind of a full circle in larger firms and architects and the roles they play. Like, if you're a designer, you need to migrate through that path to understand how buildings get built and how they get detailed and like how water flows downhill. You need to understand all that so that you can go back to be a designer and be a better one, right? It's not just wallpaper and coat of paint that makes things look good. It's how you build it, and it's how you design it. And I think that's borne out a lot. If I just look at the work that you guys sometimes work on, and some of the work you talk about is when you kind of offer a turnkey product and you're both designing it and building it, those things are a little bit more integrated. And sometimes you get this really amazing product. Now that assumes that you're good at doing both those things to begin with, because there's people that suck at doing both those things. So, but there's less drop off, right? As opposed to if I just design a house and I take it all the way through and I don't talk to anybody about anything and I just drop it at the foot of some builder and say, go, what am I going to get, a better product or a worse product? I would say I'm going to get a worse product than if I brought that contractor in and there's some collaboration and I'm letting people who do what they do all day and are better at it than I am contribute to the end goal. That's how we look at it. So
I've always it's always blown my mind how even from architect, engineer, or an interior designer, how they are doing their job without completely understanding. I guess completely would be just having a better grasp of the construction process, because I think that good designs with that in mind. And they kind of have to dovetail with each other. They can't be independent of each other. And I know that there are a lot of designers who don't truly understand how things come together. And yes, it works on paper, but that just wouldn't work in the process of things. And it is so important for designers to understand, that part of the job.
Yeah. Well, I think you could even take it one step further, and it's not even just understand how one guy or one person does their job. It's like sequencing. All right. So if I design something that requires you to bring out, a mason to work for a little bit, then he's got to leave. So your steel guy can come in and do some of, like a couple of moves, and then you got to bring your mason back out to finish out what the steel guy had to do. And like that kind of out of sequencing design and detailing makes everything harder. It makes it more expensive. It takes longer to build the projects. And it's something that until you've kind of lived through it, it's really hard to kind of see that in your mind's eye and put that into your process, which is why, I mean, I don't know that everybody would agree with this. Most architects don't really start hitting their stride until their 40s and they're like in their early 50s, I don't think. And it's because it takes so long to kind of master all the different things we have to do to be able to take what you do into consideration into what I do when you're not part of the conversation yet.
I think the especially nowadays with social media, everyone talks about collaboration and taking a more collaborative approach, but it is, I think, wildly underrated, but also incredibly important. Just like you just talked about the sequencing of events. And I think that, something that we talk about on here a lot is that, the cost of doing these projects, the cost of doing detail work, the argument how modern architecture is simpler, it should be cheaper, but it's not, because it's typically exactly what you just said. It's a sequencing thing where, for you to do a frameless glass detail, your glass guy's on site 3 times the amount of times, your tile guy's on site twice as many times. And it becomes a sequencing thing where it's like when you want to actually start combating or challenging the cost of construction, it requires, someone either really good at taking, say, what an architect designs, and then reversing that and coming back and saying, we can do that, but we're not going to do frameless glass, or we're going to do this and we're going to go about this a different way, so I don't have to bring the mason on site multiple times. But oftentimes it's not, it doesn't become this collaborative approach. It just becomes, architect drawing what they want. Like I was in this position a year ago where an architect designed this, slat wall that was made up of steel that was floor to ceiling. It had glass behind it that was frameless. It had this tub that couldn't fit into the doorway of the shower. We ended up taking this $10,000 tub delivered in framing because it was the only time it would fit in the space. And all of these things, and I remember sitting down with the architect at one point, and we had tracked it. We had spent like 90 something hours in the office trying to figure out how we were going to make this slat wall work to make it look right. And we, stupid of us, we didn't reach out to the architect and asking what their thought process was. But when we did, the architect straight up said, we had no idea how you were going to do this or sequence it. And frankly, we were ready to accept something that was a lesser detail because we didn't think it could be done. And I hated when he said that, because it's like the whole point of what you do is to design stuff that's really well thought out. And not that it wasn't well thought out, it was beautiful, and at the end of the day it looks beautiful, but it's like taking the approach of working alongside the builder, or getting that feedback, or detailing it in a way where when it's not perfect or 100%, it still functions and achieves what you were set out to achieve.
Yeah.
You know what's weird is during that entire conversation, even Bob, yours in the beginning, when you're describing the size of companies and all that, all my mind was screaming was accountability. With smaller firms, what you didn't discuss was a smaller firm, there's no way of hiding from accountability. If it's a 2-person company or a 3-person company, like Tyler, it's the simplest thing ever. There's no one else you can blame. It's 100% on him. And then some people come
Sometimes I blame my wife.
Because
she ends up calling me on it. She's like, this has nothing to do with me.
I'm going to start blaming Tyler too.
You can blame my wife.
Giving me that opportunity.
It's like kids on the ice when they miss a pass and they look at their stick. Yo, it ain't the stick.
Yeah.
It's really, my point is, like, you have people that come from bigger firms to a smaller company. The really big adjustment is, hey, there's no hiding here. If I don't get it done and I say I'm going to get something done, in a bigger firm, you can throw delegation around and go, oh no, Billy's working on that right now. It's tougher to do when there's less and less people in the pool of accountability. But then, like, whose job is it? Like, I would love to understand, like, Frank Lloyd Wright and Falling Water. Do you think he designed that around? We talked about this before. Like, when you're trying to design a space, do you do it off of budget, or do you do it off of what the inspiration is? And if Frank Lloyd Wright designed Falling Water around logistics, do you think the product or the design would have been the same? Or, you got to pour this first. It's really not like Legos. It's right. Like, it's about the actual, and that's what I would want from the architect. And I take the role of figuring shit out. Where's the dumpster go? Where is this? Because it's as soon as you think it's on someone else, it's not. Nick, I've done this where we've had to cut walls open in a renovation to put the tub in.
Yeah.
We do all this, and then we make sure we go through this. And I feel like I wouldn't go, hey, I'm not saying you did this. I'm saying, like, I wouldn't go, oh, the architect didn't think of this. I wouldn't assume that was on there. It's like having the drain, like where the drain goes on the joist. All these things, I think, fall on us, and
totally,
and it should.
Yeah, I actually agree with you with the sense, like, I'm glad the architect wasn't, like, we weren't involved in that design, because it would have ended up a simpler solution that would have been
corrupted it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like your Frank Lloyd Wright reference, where it's like but the flip side is that, I think a lot of architects, and I'm generalizing here, but I think a lot of architects design with the understanding of what a builder can produce. So they immediately scale back the creativity, because it's like they can't build that,
or what a builder's willing to produce, right?
Where it's like, I think from the architect's perspective, like, let's start with what is the dream, and then obviously that has to be paired with the right builder that is willing to, like you said, Tyler, like, willing to build it, and then willing to figure it out, and then it becomes a collaborative approach of, like, all right, this is the goal. How do we achieve this goal? What are our options here, without simplifying or losing the goal in mind?
I got another way for you guys to look at it, because the challenge that you guys have that's different from the challenge I have is, you're known for doing a certain type of thing. And I don't mean to put you in a bucket quite so specifically, but Nick, nobody comes to you if they're like trying to stretch a budget, right? Like, I've seen the work you do. It ain't cheap. And if somebody goes, I got $175 a foot, what can you do for me? You're like, I can give you the number to another contractor. That's how that goes. So one of the things that most architects who kind of, and I'm not at the top, right? I don't work on these projects that have unlimited budgets, but I have different categorizations of contractors. I have A contractors, B contractors, C contractors. I have guys that are good at solving problems. I have guys that are not good at solving problems. I got guys that are good at reading drawings, and I have to kind of match up the project type the budget, like how much they want to pay. Because if I've got a good project with an okay budget and I can get that with a good contractor, I can save the money because I can draw less, right? I can just cover the things that I need to because I know that contractor Barry, he's really good. And I don't need to tell him to do certain things because his standard of care is so high that he's going to do it even if I don't tell him to do it. Whereas on another job, I might have somebody that says, if I don't draw it and tell them exactly what I need them to do, they won't do it. And so there's this balancing act that has to happen. And then the umbrella over all that is not only my fees, like how much am I getting paid to actually solve all these problems on paper before there's 3 guys standing out in the field looking at a wall going, well, how does this work? Right? How do I solve that problem before versus if someone pays me enough money for me to draw it and I can say, hey, let's get the contractor on early so that our goal is normally try to get a contractor selected on board by the end of design development so that they can have some ownership in sequencing. And if I say, this is what I'm trying to do, and they go, well, that's crazy, but let's see if we can't come up with a different idea. Because to be honest with you, the best contractors I work with, they're better at doing some parts of my job than I am because they build things day in and day out. So they know sequencing better than I do, right? I might think about it, right? Or I might consider, like a great example is I wrote a post years ago on my site and it was called The Art of Residential Construction. And the idea for it was I was doing this house is about 10,000 square feet. It was pretty complicated. It had a steel superstructure. It technically was a duplex. It had 2 buried basements. It had a bridge, that spanned from the front. There was a lot of moving parts on this project. And I went into the job site one day and the contractor had all these marks spray painted on the floor. There was like yellow straight lines, circular green lines, hooking yellow lines, and what he was doing is he was marking on the floor before framing happened, what's happening in the ceiling and where's ductwork running and what walls are going to deck and where am I going to have penetrations. And he was doing a certain level of coordination on the job site ahead of time, because when you do work on, say, modern projects and you don't want cut bricks where your windows are going, that's kind of a big deal, right? It's on me to say, hey, I'm going to pick a window that has an increment that's a masonry increment, right? That makes sense. But if he doesn't coordinate it with the guy who starts on the far right and is working his way over, and I end up with, 2 inches of brick before it has to get cut where the window is because he didn't think about that ahead of time, even though I thought I did it and I detailed it, it looks bad, right? And it's part of the reason when you said, there's a architecture phrase by Mies van der Rohe, less is more. We always say that's your budget. Like if you want there to be less, it's going to cost you more. Like if I don't have trim that can hide walls that aren't straight and ceilings that aren't plumb, right? Or if I want to have like perfectly level floors, right? Like hand scrape wood floors. Some people love them, but I go, it's the cheapest wood I can get because I don't need this beautiful, pristine piece of wood. It hides all kinds of construction tolerances built within it, right? So there's all these things that we have to consider as part of that whole process of building. But it's all like, you're probably not getting asked to solve the same type of problems that somebody who maybe isn't as big or doesn't have the resources or doesn't have the budget to the projects that you're working on, can't spend 90 hours tracking a project about how to get a tub in a room, things like that. And you would think at that same level, somebody's probably not paying the architect to solve those problems either.
Right.
That's part of the challenge. And at what point do you decide where the value is and what problems you can solve and what problems you want to collaborate on and one you just kind of hope work out right?
Yeah, also in those situations, if the architect or the designer is doing a good job of kind of tracking where those bottlenecks are and those pinch points are and articulating, whether it's on the plans or on-site conversation with the builder, that it may be an issue that's really as much as you can do. I think at the end of the day, when stuff like that comes up and it's not intentional on the designer's behalf, that the builder's the one building it. And if they want to be doing the type of work that you designed, and that's why they picked you for the job, that they should kind of be on board with sorting out and walking through those details beforehand. Like you said, the builder who's walking around and kind of spray painting what's going to be on the floor. that's not necessarily because the architect went and said, hey, this is what we have here, this is what's going on. That's to try and mitigate as many issues as possible during that build, because it's easiest to nip them in the butt beforehand.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we had the conversation last week too. It's just the way that companies and businesses, and it's probably the same thing with design, the way things are structured right now, it's almost as if so much of it is to absolve everyone from responsibility, where people were designing and building in a way that there was just ownership of that product. There'd probably be less headaches, even, as far as waterproofing details and, like you said, getting people in for certain trades, and then one trade has to hop out and somebody else comes in. When you get into a bigger company that's running off all sub trades, that's very difficult and very costly to do.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
I mean, for me, I can switch gears on any job. Even thinking as far as you want to get tile in before your wood trim goes in, but what about where you have like a door casing that tile's going to go up against, and you have to sort out, you're just going to guess where the casing's going to end. But it's very easy for me to say, hey, I don't have to guess. I can bring a piece of the exact casing, tack it up. Where you get into a bigger company and they have carpentry subtrades and tile subtrades, and you don't have the ability to switch gears like that. So it does become difficult to manage and more costly.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see people doing what you just described. If we have that condition, they'll tack in a piece of sacrificial wood in place to solve that problem and then pull it off. But it really, a lot of times we see that work being done, and this is interesting. Down the kind of the higher end contractors we see in Texas, Dallas area in particular. The thing that tells me if I'm going to have a successful project, like the thing that hedges my bets the most, is if I have a full-time site superintendent. If I have that, man, my odds of having an awesome project go up exponentially. And a lot of times it's that site superintendent who tacked that piece of wood on there, not somebody else.
Yeah.
And part of the reason when people say, well, how do you justify the cost in that? I'll go, well, look at it this way. I have 12 projects. That guy's got one. He should know this one project better than I do. So when he starts thinking, hey, we're pouring grade beams, but I need to do a leave out in this grade beam because I'm going to run an underfloor main trunk line through here. And so he's thinking about that before they pour. So instead of after pouring, and they got to saw cut it out because now they're solving that problem 9 months later, and they realize that they need that grade beam to not be in that one spot. Those guys solve that problem early. And it all comes down to, when I made the comment to him, I go, man, I missed that. I did not realize, because, we do a lot of design build where MEP and HVAC kind of work is concerned. It doesn't until we get to much higher budgets that we can afford to bring in someone to actually document and draw out those trades. So they get together. We'll have meetings on site and even in the job shack, which could just be could be a piece of plywood on some 2x4s. We'll talk about it at a point, and they're the ones that solve those problems as often, if not more often, than I do. About sequencing.
John, how do you feel about full-time site super?
Agreed. I think it all depends on the budget and the execution levels that are in the drawings.
Even if so from a budget perspective, what would have to happen for you to be able to put somebody on a project full time, John?
No, I guess my point is that, like, we have a product that's going to be a kitchen and a bathroom, first floor renovation. And yeah, I could put a super there. I could do this blanket context where I always put a super there and they're full time. If I'm there for 4 months for a superintendent, it's going to be as much as the appliance budget.
Yeah.
So it just that's when I paused. It was that reasoning, is that it all depends. But beyond that, I think most of the products.
Can I pause you there for a second?
Oh yeah, fire away, dude. Yeah.
If that 4 months that you were there, I agreed from a financial side, it's like it's an appliance budget. However, do you think that if someone was there full time, you would have ended up with a better result or a more successful result?
I think it's bandwidth. If you try and put 4 products that they have to revolve around, then that's probably too many. But I'm speaking in generic terms.
Yeah.
If someone can juggle a lot of balls, like what we can do, then yeah, they could be great at that and have 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just finding out from an employee what their bandwidth is. And right now our rule of thumb is splitting them between 2. We have one super that right now we have 2 supers and they both are on one project each.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. So I have to be there less.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. But I mean, in a perfect world, having someone on site, it's just, we all know that there's certain points in time where no one's needed there.
Right.
And we're just burning management money, where it's just being strategic about it. Like when we write our schedule for values and it's like, hey, we're doing 4 hours a day, depending on the execution levels. If the scope ramps up and we have to do more stuff and we're trying to keep a certain timeline, then obviously management needs to adjust. But if it doesn't, we just need to be smart about it. And you know, PMs having them run 2 jobs and splitting that salary, it's trying not to be top heavy with management. And there's a diminished return, I think, at a certain point, and being just cognizant of that.
I should clarify. This is for like new builds. I would never expect to see, if I'm doing an addition, renovation, or, you know, something that is smaller scope, small square footage, smaller budget, that it doesn't make sense at a certain point. But like for all my new builds that we do, that's something that we asked for. Because what we found is, even if it adds, you know, the amount of money that it adds, I almost always can look back and say, it saved that fee. Like the cost of adding that full-time super to that new build saves you in time. It saves you in undoing mistakes because somebody went downstream for 2 days before he came back on site and said, oh, wait, no, this isn't right. This is not what we wanted. Like the amount of undo and redo that happens. I think it's easy to justify the expense on a new build of a full-time superintendent. It's proportional for renovation work.
I think from what I've seen in the industry, that there's very few that do it perfectly well, like that manage the right amount of time of a manager on site. There's a lot of people that are running and gunning and leaving subs to run jobs. And then you get to a certain price point where that's happening. And then this middle price point, they're trying to find the balance, and they do a good job of it. And that window is super small. And then there's this over management where they have PMs and supers on site, and then they have mechanical engineers, and they have lighting designers, and they have everyone has their chunk. So it's very sporadic that anyone has it dialed in. So, and I get it. I think, like, I just wrote an offer letter to someone last night, and Benny had sent it to me on the last one we sent out, and he's like, yeah, you're responsible for, you know, the day in and out of the job site, blah, blah. And then I immediately deleted the entire thing. I waited like a week for it. And then I read it at 11 o'clock last night, and I deleted almost all of it. So I was like, I want you to be an advocate for the design when no one else is being that advocate. You get me? When the architect's there every 2 weeks, that's great. You can sit back and go, oh, they got this. They're going to look at everything, and they're going to tell me and digest what they want corrected or what they love and what they don't. But when you're not there, you are the advocate for that. Like, you're the advocate for the budget when the client doesn't know. And that's when you say it that way, is that you always have to be on. Because I think my biggest concern long-term is that people go through the motions. They get comfortable, honeymoon stage is over. And then it doesn't matter how well detailed the drawings are, which the question I have for you is, I know you're doing stuff all over the US. It's how do you design for markets that you don't know? You know, like you can design and go, I had this one builder in mind, but man, his sub pool's been falling apart. You know, how do I, like, do you have to put in more details? That way the people can, you know, what you said in the beginning, the skills trades gap, how are you compensating for that? You know, is it putting in more details? Like your sets 10 years ago were probably 15 pages. Now you find that they're 27 pages because you really got to show all these little idiosyncrasies. That way there is no gray area. There's nothing that kind of gets dropped. How are you compensating for that?
Well, funny, you said 27 pages. I was like, that was 10 years ago. It's 27 pages. Now our sets are up to 80 pages, you know, and more.
A lot of it's boilerplate, you know, take it from
none of it. Yeah, none of it's boilerplate. I wish it was. Right. So, but to get to your question, so here, I'll give you 2 examples. So we did a project, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. It was in northern Wisconsin. And the challenge we had is there just was not a very good contractor pool up there. And the guys that build homes, man, what they built were like log cabins. and it was not, and this owner wanted a really modern looking project, and the detailing was a lot different. The type of windows that we would use, like the biggest window anybody had built up there was a 6080 sliding glass door that doubled as a piece of glass. That's the biggest window they have. So we went up there and had a meeting, and we said, what kind of trades do you have? What do you have access to? What's a premium? What do you got to bring in from the one state over if I try to build it? And what we found is, like, there's no masons. There's like no masons in this part of Wisconsin. So we knew that, okay, don't detail anything that required any kind of masonry unit and mortar. It's just, there's nobody there to do it. And so we modify our drawings to accommodate those things. And this particular client was, from a fee standpoint, was great, because what they wanted was for us to literally draw everything. I had every flashing detail on even like standard metal roof. We have metal roof. Sometimes you can say just follow manufacturer's recommended details for these conditions. We drew and dimensioned every single one of them. And part of it was because this was all new to them. The flip side is those guys didn't really look at the drawings, right? Because they're not used to looking at the drawings. And so they don't even, like, they would argue and go, oh, there's so much paper. Like, quit sending us all these drawings, right? Because they don't know what to look for, and they couldn't find it, and they couldn't keep track of it. And if we made a modification to the set because the owner changed their mind about something, we would show up and I'm like, this drawing's 3 drawings old. Like, you're not even working from the most current drawing. That was something we challenged with. But then we have a project right now that's in Wyoming, and it's about as extreme a weather condition as you can get almost from where I am in Dallas to where this house is in Wyoming. And the owner wants to use insulated concrete forms, which we don't get any requests for that down here in South, at least in Dallas. You rarely see it. And his house burned down, and he's like, you know what? I want a concrete framed house. That's what I want. And so us having to learn how to do that and incorporate it with our subs and then talk to the contractor, we had to track down a contractor up there and talk to him. And I'll tell you, he was telling me, like, just the other day, we were having a conversation about this house is supposed to break ground in the spring of next year, but the remnants from the burned down house are still there. They're still on the site. And so he wanted to get started to say, hey, can I do this demo early so that when we can start in the spring, after everything thaws, I can get right into construction. I don't have to start with demolition. The amount of money it's going to cost us to demo it was sky high. And frankly, I was like, I don't understand why this is so high. He goes, well, the nearest landfill is 3 hours away because we're out in the middle of nowhere.
Can't they just keep burning stuff?
Well,
like that's what they do out there.
Just let it burn off.
Burn barrel.
Yeah. Well, that's what they did in Wisconsin. And this one, but like all this stone and rock and concrete that we got to haul off. So they're like, can we just dig a big hole on site and bury it? Normally that's not my go-to solution for getting rid of waste on a project site, is to bury it. But so now we're having to research, is that even viable? What's that's going to do to the ground 10 years from now? Do I need to worry about groundwater contamination? And I'm assuming that nothing that's decomposable is considered, but I don't have any paperwork or language that says this is what you can bury and what you can't bury. So these are all new problems that we have to solve because we're working out in the middle of nowhere. And we don't have resources. We don't have.
It's funny that you're concerned about that.
Yeah. I feel like it'd just be like, all right, the owner can do what they want.
I don't know how I wouldn't be concerned with it is the problem. Like, because our client, they hire us because they don't want to deal with this, right? I mean, he doesn't live there either. This is a second home for him. And he lives in Arizona. I work in Dallas. The house is going to be in Wyoming. We're all over the place.
So it makes even less sense to me
that
I would have you advising on it. Right? It's like me advising on it. Like, it doesn't, I'm not, no disrespect. To me, it seems like, cost per dollar and time, it's better off spent somewhere else and talking to an official in that area and just dialing that in. I guess if they need your opinion and they value it, then obviously you have to do it.
But I mean, if there's not a market of reputable architects there that, can handle that caliber of work, what are you going to do? Go to the local guy or girl and be like, hey, I want to build this. And they have nothing like that in their portfolio.
I guess, I was saying like No, I was saying like it should be defaulted to a civil engineer, someone that knows the ground, what you can change grades, what you can have it contaminated and whatnot. And it's, it goes back to that specialty jack of all trades. I get that we can do it. Just what's the most efficient way?
Well, I won't actually be the one that solves it. I'm the one that goes, here's 10 questions that I think that we should all be asking. The owner's not telling me what 10 questions he wants solved. He's saying, all right, what do we got to do next? And then I go figure out what questions need to ask and who we need to ask them of. And the irony is I don't get paid anymore to do this, right? This is what this kind of scope of work. It's all high touch, white glove. We charge him a percentage of the cost of construction, and pretty much anything he needs, we're going to do, which includes answering our phone at 10 o'clock at night on Saturdays, right? It's just kind of the nature of the business.
I would like to see the conversation when you approach the customer and say, hey, would you be opposed to us burying all the debris on site?
Well, my mind scrambles to the liability.
Well,
who's going to be liable for this if it does go the opposite way or something changes or I read something wrong? I don't want that liability. It's the same as I don't place the homes on the lots. It's the architect does it with the civil engineer. The civil engineer goes out and pins it. I don't dig until that sumbitch has got stakes in the ground and it's verified.
You guys get civil engineers on your jobs?
Yeah, bro. They all suck, but yeah, we have them. They never show up one time. I asked on August 16th to have a house staked. It's still not staked today. And I'm like, yo, when's that happen? Oh, it's on the short program to get done. I'm like, I'm just going to stop making shit up when my clients ask me. When's that getting done?
A civil engineer.
Not on my long-term list of goals, but it's on my short-term. So it is advancing slowly through the repertoire of my management
which
and my
is the
schedule.
paper in his pocket.
Yes.
Right.
That's funny. Yeah. In 25 years, I've only had a civil engineer once on one of my residential projects.
So how are they locating the house?
You mean like when it goes out on site? Surveyors will stake the house out. We locate it.
Okay.
So civil is
we site it.
Yeah, civil and survey. It's usually
those are two different. Those are two different guys. One guy doesn't leave the office, and the other guy's in a truck, taking your calls. Right.
Yeah, it's same. I think for us, John, but they're usually one and the same for a company. It's like you got the guys out in the field, right? Or maybe they subcontract.
Some are doing it now, but because it is so behind. But it's the same.
We do have
survey.
We do have civil companies down here that have surveying as part of their core services that you would hire. But there's a lot of companies that surveying, that's all they do. And they come out and they survey, and whenever you're going to pour a new foundation, they have to come out and survey and give you a report back that your building is where you say it is on the piece of dirt.
Right.
Now, unlike where you guys work, this particular lot's about 10 acres, right? So there's a lot of spots where I can dig a hole that nobody will ever go, that I can bury rock and concrete in.
Your setbacks is pretty much covered.
Bodies.
Yeah.
I'm building houses that they give me an inch off the setbacks. And it's like, you have an inch here and it hits 3 corners. Of the property. It's like, thanks. So I have no room forever.
It's like, hey, your drip edge is a little proud on this side.
No, thank God the roof eaves don't count. Roof eaves, fireplace extensions, bulkheads, but condensers do count.
Yeah, and you guys got to figure out lay down and all that kind of stuff. Whereas here, that's not so much an issue for us.
Yeah. It all comes down as I've gotten older. For people listening, it's like when you're younger, it's like, oh yeah, I'll do anything, running gun. And now it's like, I want, we're digging a hole. It's like the soil starts getting weird. And it's like Nick and I talked about this for build. It's like, have a soil engineer in your back pocket, because you don't want. I've heard this one story that's crept around Massachusetts about someone that built a house. They dug it and there was peat moss in the hole, and they dug it, and then someone. This is the beauty of the story. Someone declared that they hit the bottom of the hole and it was virgin soil and not peat moss. So they started building this house. Okay, built this house. And everything's going, no problem. It's like 6,000 or 7,000 square feet, no problem. They get all the rough mechanicals done, get it signed off, they foam it. Then they load the board, okay? And I've never thought about it this way of how heavy that truck of board is that shows up. They load the board and they start hanging it. The house starts sinking. And the garage starts tearing away from the main house. And then they have to spend $400,000 in helical piles to recover the foundation to where it is. So once I heard that story, 6 years ago, Yeah. I don't determine if we're at bottom of hole either. If the soil feels weird, I call Harry. Harry gives me a $500 invoice, but he's verified that we're bottom of hole. So that way the accountability chain is this. But 10 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, this looks good. This looks solid. You know?
Yeah.
Give it a stomp.
Yeah. Hold it in your hand.
I also think that it's not necessarily just having more experience. I think that when you are younger and when you're starting out, you're trying to hit a price point for your customers. Like that's the value that you're bringing them, you know, that they're going to get a decent number with you. And you feel like that's what you're coming to the table. You're not coming with years of experience and the portfolio and everything else. So a lot of times you're like, oh yeah, we can just take care of that while we're here. We don't need an electrician for that. We'll just do that. Obviously there's a liability there, but you think that that's the value you're bringing your customers, when in actuality, you're just putting everyone at risk.
Everyone at risk. I used to do my own electrical for my houses. And then like you think about like every time you smell something or it's windy and you're like, could my house burn down? Is that something that could happen? Because you know what? It could happen. But if my electrician does it, that's not really on the... So then I'm like, I'm going to sleep at night. I'm not going to do electrical anymore.
Just sleep better. What do you guys get geotech reports on all your projects?
It all depends on the soil. We've had issues in Wellesley where there's a lot of silt, high water table, stuff like that. Yeah. So like as soon as the ground, like is if you're at the beach and you start moving your feet back and forth and the water starts coming up and then it gets like quicksand, that'll happen a lot. So in order to do that, a couple of years ago, the answer would be helical piles or, you know, smash some telephone poles down there until you hit, you know, something solid. But now it's like with the soil engineer, it's dig down an extra foot, depending on the soil conditions, flat bucket, no teeth, cut that out, put 10 inches of crushed stone, fill the fabric on top and build away. So it's like, it all depends on if you dig it and it's normal now, where it looks, you know, totally, you almost see the lines in the excavation where you go from loam to it drops and we're good. But then we also have ledge. So we have to have someone, this town's all about legalities. And yeah, like I don't even know why they inspect, because they're just collecting paperwork.
Yeah, I mean it's
like
that's the whole thing. It's liability, and that's why they want to sign off from an architect or an engineer, as built, all that stuff. It's just about being accountable. Especially you talk to inspectors who give you a hard time when there shouldn't be a reason for giving you a hard time, and that's what it's about. It's about accountability or being held liable for something.
Yeah, we describe that as putting yourself in the most defensible position. So if there's a way to interpret something two ways, whatever the most restrictive way that you can interpret it is, that's what they choose. Which is funny because I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you do where you're at, deal with planning and zoning boards a lot. And planning and zoning generally has the idea that as long as you don't make something worse, it's okay if it sucks, right? Just don't make it worse. So if I have a setback and I go, well, it's supposed to be 50 and these three people next to me are at 40, which is wrong. They'll say, all right, well, you can do 40 because it's not worse than what's already there, even though it's still not right, which is a mentality I never could understand.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. Or kind of, it's the whole zoning thing, you know, it's broad strokes for everything. And I often feel that each project should be looked at as a one-off project, and it's not financially feasible, but I just think that that's part of the issue with the way things are getting built today. It's like, well, you know, it's within the tolerances of zoning law, so yeah, you can build it, when in actuality it just may not make any sense to build that there.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's crazy.
Everything's kind of painted with broad strokes.
It's, you know, I was telling the story actually just the other day. Before I started my business, I worked for a commercial firm, and we were building a high rise in downtown Boston. And one of my roles was when the architect was on site, I would walk the job with him, kind of do a QC check with everything, walk, you know, all the floors and take notes and then address them accordingly. And I remember walking the job one day, and it's a high rise. So on the lower floors, they're literally painting drywall. And then you get up, you know, 10 floors above that, they're pouring concrete. So it's open to the elements. And, you know, so we had these temporary roofs, and in the budget was, you know, basically replacing wet drywall if it rained some days. But we're walking. And so the point is there's finished floors below. we're walking and we get up to a floor that the precast has been installed, and now they're installing the rock wool, foil faced rock wool on the backside of the precast for the insulation detail. And in the precast were these little like 2-inch by 4-inch bucks that were just part of the forming process. And there's this kid there, and he's cutting foam insulation, and he's putting it in there, and he's taping it, and then he's got a guy behind him putting the rock wool, insulation on top of that. That's foil faced, and the architect stops and says, "What are you doing? You can't. This is a high rise. You can't use foam in a high rise." So it became this like emergency of like, we've done this on all the 10 floors below us. And it's like, this is an emergency. Like, you can't use foam in a high rise. That's a fire code, blah, blah, blah. And we look at the drawing, and it got hashed incorrectly. So in the drawing, it was hashed as rigid foam, and everything else was hashed as rock wool, like semi-rigid. And I remember, like, going back to the liability thing, it turned into rip it all out, go as far down as you can. Like, and I'm like, we can't rip drywall. You go as far as you can. And everyone's like ripping this foam out and redoing the installation. We incur a change order. And then the architect writes this long CYA letter saying, we've assessed the situation and realized that it's a very minuscule amount of foam. This is not a fire code. We are absolving ourselves from the decision to remove it. And I was like, so here I am. I'm like 20-something years old. I'm telling 100 people to rip out all this foam, and we get this change order from the insulator. And the architect's like, no, we don't. It doesn't matter. You don't have to rip it out. And I'm like, you told me to rip it out on site.
Yeah.
It's like,
have you made it very far yet, or is this, or was this after the fact when you got that change order?
No, it was probably. Let me think. We probably got that letter 3 days later. So we had removed everything that we could access without ripping drywall out. And then it was like followed up, and it was like, hey, here's your change order for making us rip all that insulation out. And I was like, that's a fair change order, because at the end of the day, it wasn't necessary. But it's like this passive liability, and it's constant like, yeah, if I can cover my ass, then we're good. And that's like, and it's frustrating. Like, that's, I think that's why you said early on, it's like what architects do well, but, what architects don't do well. And it's like absolving themselves from something that, was a fire drill in this situation for 3 days, turning into nothing just so, they couldn't be financially responsible for it.
It's like and I don't know if this is because I started in a small firm, but we'd kind of talked about collaboration, like it's a thing now, like it's a trend. And I'm like, it's weird. It's weird to me because it's always been there, partially because since I've worked for small firms, you get thrown in the deep end and you're like, you can play the I don't know what I'm doing card for only so long. But when you're young, it's easy. You can say, I need your help. I'm trying to do the right thing here. We're working together. What's your take on this? Like, this is what I was thinking. Right. And it just kind of builds this mentality into you of working together. And I'll also tell you that, as a little sidebar, the thing that's helped that mentality go so much is, I'd say in the last 10 years, probably 98% of my contracts are cost plus. And it moves the contractor to the same side of the table that I'm on. And so, like, they're not worried about, hey, if I make a mistake, I'm going to get screwed, right? It removes change orders from the process because you can move money around, from one bucket to another without getting penalized for it. So it's really worked out well, and it's really contributed to this kind of collaborative environment. I will tell you that I worked on a project. This would have been probably, almost 20 years ago. And like, I brought into this firm, and they told me that this was the first day after Black Friday. And I was like, I don't know what that means. They go, well, we laid off like everybody in the office except for like 2 people last Friday. And it's because the firm had grown and people had been moved into roles that they weren't naturally suited for, or weren't necessarily had the skill set to actually do. And so the firm was having some problems. They brought in a group to evaluate their talent, all that kind of stuff. And they said, you got a bunch of people doing jobs they shouldn't be doing. So they let all those people go, and they went and hired people to do those.
I saw this movie, jobs. Office Space, wasn't it?
I don't know. Mine wasn't a movie. I lived it. But luckily I was on the solution side, not the Black Friday side. Oh yeah. That's
John.
a nice red stapler. But I will tell you, one of the projects I got brought in on was this, it was a commercial project, and it was well, I shouldn't say, I don't want to get in trouble, but it was for this project, and the contractor, it was for a community, for a city, and they had one really sweet project, and they had this really crummy project that they said, if you get one, you have to do them both, because their concern was that nobody would bid for the small project because it wasn't a very good project and everybody was really busy. So they're like, you want to go do the good one, you got to do the bad one. Well, the contractor who won the bid missed that this other project ever existed. So day one, they're about $500,000 in the hole, right? Like once they realize what's going on, that their bid's been accepted to do both projects, but they didn't bid one of them. So they're upside down, $500,000 as soon as they realize that. So every decision moving forward was like this really combative, like I'm going to try to get every penny out of every possible interpretation that doesn't align with like what we bid, and it's going to be an additional charge. And we'd have these conversations, and this was something with my background I just didn't understand. He would say, I remember this one time we had a guardrail that was in position, and I didn't draw these drawings. When I got hired, they're like, you need to go manage the construction administration on this job that you didn't design and you didn't draw.
Nice.
Right? And so, but I'm like, okay, I like contractors. I get along really well with them. So we'll work it out. So this guy, he sends in this thing, and he's like, you didn't give us any details on this handrail. So you need to tell us what it is, and we're going to send you a change order. And I go, well, what did you price? He goes, well, it was a competitive bid, and you didn't tell us what it was, so I didn't price anything. I go, hold on a minute. Here it is. It's in plan. I have elevations of it. You have like an indication of at least what it looks like, and you didn't ask any questions about it. So out of all the options that were available to you, the one thing you knew it wasn't was $0, right? Like anything would have been closer to correct than zero. And I said, so what if you should have priced something, you knew it existed. And he goes, no, we didn't price anything. And I go, see, I have a problem with that. If you had said, you didn't tell us, so we made the assumption it was plywood and 2x4s, because that's what it looks like, then I'd say that's reasonable. Well, and this is what we want. So let's talk about what it's going to cost to get it from what you assumed to what we want it to be. But for them to just flat out say, you didn't tell us, so we did zero, the one thing they knew it wasn't, kind of created this atmosphere of like everything has to be a fight. And I just don't understand that. And
well, it's like, by code, like it's one of the things you had to have to get occupancy.
Yeah.
It's a necessary evil. So if you're not to have that line in them, I'm calling bullshit. Yeah. And that's from the contractor side. Like I've missed stuff in the past. And I mean, unless that handrail is, obnoxious, I think you got to eat that one. But the whole second project, dude, who bundled that job up?
How did that not get tossed?
Yeah,
it was bad. That job was rough. Every time I saw the owner of that company, he said he was going to sue me into the ground and wreck my life. And
why wouldn't you just walk away at that point?
Good thoughts.
Well, I worked, the company I worked for, they were the architect for that.
No,
the builder.
not you.
Yeah.
Like,
The builder?
If I was awarded a job and they said, and then I've said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that there was a garage that was supposed to be included. I got to walk away because I can't do this job. Like, why wouldn't you walk away at that point?
I don't know.
But at the same point, like, shouldn't it be like some sort of like I find when I get architects that are putting that together, not that exact scenario, but they have like, hey, here's the allowances I want you to carry. Here's this build. Here's the other garage build. Give me the totals for both, whatever it is. So that way it's really obvious you got to fill in these values for each category. So that way it's like not flipping the page over, on a test and be like, I finished, pass it in. You failed because you didn't do the backside. Right.
Well, there's that, if we put it on a residential scale, back when we used to do competitively bid projects, guys leave stuff out. It happens. And sometimes we'd have owners that would say, hey, you got to stick it to them. It was competitively bid. So like they forgot that they missed this sink or whatever it is. And it's a $300 sink. So they got to eat it. And I always say, well, you shouldn't expect to get something for free. Right. So I can agree that they have some responsibility because they shouldn't have missed it, but they did. But you also shouldn't take the position that because they made a mistake, you get it for free.
Yeah.
Right. We need to find some way to get meeting in the middle here because everybody needs to have a little skin in the game. And it's funny how that simple of a conversation, because that's such a reasonable position to take. I can't think of a time when a homeowner said, screw that. Like, no, they missed it. They have to eat it. When you phrase it that, hey, you shouldn't expect things for free and you would have had to pay for it, and that cost would have been there if they'd gotten it right. Now, it's a different sort of conversation if somebody gets a project because they didn't price something correctly and they're $500,000 less than some guy who actually did a better job on the bid. But then that falls to me. I should have found out why was one number so much different than another.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
I got some responsibility on that one.
I
right?
mean, normally with bid openings on public work, at least that's what they're doing to ensure that, everyone's on the same page, and the high and low bid a lot of times end up getting tossed unless everyone's numbers are alike. But I even think, looking at, residential work or a smaller job, or you forgot a sink, it's very nice to think that a customer would say, hey, I understand that you didn't have a number in for this. But if there's no paper trail of that, that's where it's tough. You're kind of taking one person's word versus another. Did he account for the sink? Did he not account for the sink? Where I think it's important to kind of note at this point, that's why it's so critical to document everything going into a job and be transparent as possible with costs. So then when you're in the job and you look and somebody sends you the sink selection and it's X amount, and you, even if it's, competitively bid project or a lump sum job, you now get the number for the sink and you go to kind of compare that to what you budgeted for, and there's no sink in your budget that you sent to the customer. You can now go to them and say, hey, look, we didn't have a sink in this line item proposal. This is what the sink cost is. It was never accounted for in the price of your job. At least you have a leg to stand on at that point.
Yeah. I think this whole conversation will run smooth if it's discussed in the beginning. If someone can't afford to buy a Mercedes and then Mercedes doesn't include the steering wheel, and you can't afford to buy the steering wheel when they forget it, even though it's not on the line item, it wasn't an option, then you shouldn't have been buying the Mercedes in the first place. So having that conversation in day one and going, hey, is our budget 1.4? Like, and not just going, hey, can we stretch it to 1.8? But like, if it's going to be 1.6, is this comfortable with the design decisions you're going to make? And if it's tight, then we should go a different direction right now. So I got to put that on Bob in the beginning, because a lot of times we're not there in that conversation that early. So yes, it can run smooth where Bob can be an advocate for the design as well as the GC, which is awesome. Only if it's super squeezed, like Tyler, you've made the comment before, like, we bid the project and they want to include this. So we made it a little tighter, and I tightened some stuff up. I gave some stuff for free. You give stuff for free because the budget's already tight for them. So now you're building a house and then some things start falling off the radar that the GC missed. Yeah, they might be like, dude, we got nothing left. We're not going to grab a second mortgage.
But at that point, it should be whoever's managing that budget when that comes in and realizes if there were things that were missed on the line item budget. Now that's up to the customer how they want to spend their money at that point, where it's like, hey, you want to afford the steering wheel, or do you not want to kind of put that on there, where it's like you get to that point and you miss this, and this, and it's going to be this much more. Well, then you have to make a decision. Do you still want to go all in and get everything that you wanted? Or do you want to, start picking some different finishes, or take this out of the budget and come back to that? Where I think that there's always a way to handle these problems, and it works. You can't just dig your heels in this position, and it shouldn't just be falling back on, well, legally my contract says this, because you have to have it. Well, you have to have a relationship with your customers. You're there every day. You want to get those pictures 3 years after the plants grow in, right? You have to keep everything good with your customer. But those conversations should be happening all along. But like, if you have a customer who's like, you missed that, you have to pay for it, then you're not going to want to go do something for them down the road. So I think it has to be a little bit of give and take on both parties' behalves. But I think the more that you include up front and that you have handed over to your customer to see the transparency of what you're pricing and the a written scope of what it includes and specifically what it doesn't include, you're going to get a lot of things. If you do miss them, you have a better chance of getting them covered without a fight. If you have a budget that basically clearly explains everything that's included.
Okay, let me ask you this, right? I've never had to live through this because this is a contractor issue, what I'm about to bring up.
Of course it is. Don't bring up architects issues. I see how it is. That's cool.
That's right. Okay, so here's the story. You'll take that back after you hear the story. So we're doing a project. It has nothing to do with my documentation. This is 100%, well, you'll just hear. So we're building a pretty big house, and we're nearing the end of the project, probably less than a month from being done. And the pool is one of the last things that gets done on these projects, because the last thing you want is a hole dug in your site, like that people could fall in for the length of the build, right? So pools go in towards the end. So the contractor had built a pool. They're putting the final touches on it. So he ends up clogging up all the seals and puts just enough water in the pool to see if it's going to, like, that the seals are going to hold, right? It's Friday, clogs it up, puts like 1.5 feet of water in the pool. And this is more like a water feature for this house, is really for like a plunge pool for their dogs is what this was. And it was probably 15 feet by 20. I know.
Dude, keep painting this picture. It gets better. Go.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, so he does that. So he leaves. It's Friday night. He goes, and the idea is I'm coming back on Monday and I'm going to check it out. And
Seems
he comes
like a nightmare already, just for the record.
Right.
Anything you do on a Friday night, that's like turning the water on.
I was going to say, turn all the appliances on and run them, and we'll check them out when we get back on Monday.
It's holding 1 foot of water. That's all it's doing. It's not adding one. It's just 1 foot static, right? So he leaves, because the point is pretty natural. You do it when you ever check a shower pan. You plug it up, fill it full of water, and leave and see if it holds water. Like, this is what you do. It's just how the process works. And keep in mind that this house had already been broken into earlier. So it had 24-hour security on it. Like, it was totally enclosed. It had a security guard parked who was supposed to walk the site constantly, right? The owners come by. It's Friday night. They've been out having a good time, and they want to see progress. So they're walking around the site 7 or 8 o'clock at night, something like that. They see that the pool's got water in it. They're like, oh my God, like the pool's got water. It's so exciting. Wonder what it looks like when it's full, right? And the way this house was built was ground level was really level 2. It's a 3-story building. So there was a basement level, ground floor, upper level. And the site dropped off from the front to the back. So the lower level and the back was actually at grade, right? They take a hose, drop it in the pool, crank on the water. And the house was about 10,000 square feet. So they go walking around the house for about an hour and a half, just checking stuff out. And they leave, and they forget that they had the hose on in the pool. Pool fills all the way up, overflows, because this is a zero-edge pool. Like the deck just goes right in the pool, overflows, runs downhill, goes down the stairs to the back of the lot where the third floor daylights, floods that area. And it ends up doing about $80,000 worth of damage. Right. And it ran all weekend long. Like, the guy who was supposed to be walking the site, who was there, just never walked and said, oh, this water's probably not supposed to be doing this.
Pool didn't leak, so that's good.
Pool didn't leak. So the owners come back, and the contractor says, all right, so this is what happened. This, it's overflowed and flooded. And
so hold on, imagine being the contractor.
Damage. Let me see the video.
Flooded. No, but you come back and it's flooded. You're like, holy shit. Then I take I put a little bit in. Like, he's probably taking accountability in my head for the whole thing.
So they tell him, and he can see the hose. It has a tub filler. I mean, it has a water filler in it. And he sees it, and he says, all right, so I got the estimates. It's about $80,000 worth of damage. And the homeowner goes, well, that's on you. And he's like, what? How's that on me? Like, you came and you threw a hose in there and forgot to turn it off and overflowed and flooded. How's that on me? And they're like, well, you should have had an automatic shutoff valve on the pool. And he goes, we do. If you use the pool filler to fill it, you used a hose from around the corner, so it didn't shut off when the pool got filled up. He ate it.
What?
He ate that cost. He ate the cost. And this is why I was bringing it up. He ate it because in this area of the country, the owner goes around like bad mouthing the contractor for certain things,
Right.
like what he loses on that $80,000 is a drop in the bucket to what he loses when that owner goes around like trash talking his name and saying how he causes problems and doesn't own up to his solutions and da da da. Every contractor I know down here that does high end work, they have a slush fund that just pays for things that they didn't do, that it's not worth burning that relationship with the homeowner. Is that not crazy? I mean, every time I hear stories like that.
On the budget?
No, it's not built into the projects. It's just like the one guy in particular, he just keeps an account, keeps $250,000 in that account just to pay for things like this. Like, it's always there.
It's crazy, but it's not. I would say it's not abnormal. Like,
it makes my blood boil.
That's the first I've ever heard it in my entire life.
I don't think I'd pay for that.
Yeah.
I think I'd tell the customer to go take a hike.
But John, like and Tyler, we've definitely been in a position where we've decided to eat something for the relationship.
Yeah, but I mean, this is an extreme example of that where you have them on film.
Totally agree.
Like, what's this market? I mean, they have a security guard that's parked there all day doing anything, getting paid. So I'm assuming this number is massive for the build, because I don't have that. I have an Arlo camera that it shows deer and stuff walking on my site.
Now, this was about a $9 million build, is what this was.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Nick Schiffer, I'd take the footage and then I would just post that on my social media and be like, for these people trying to talk shit about me, this is what actually happened.
And I'd be like, but I did pay for it.
He'd have a YouTube. It'd be insane.
Yeah, those kind of stories are just.
Do you think I should have paid for this?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: the owner didn't dispute that they flooded it. There was never like, "Hey, you're the one that dropped it." It's not like they were drunk and they didn't realize it. They knew that they
should pay for it.
Yeah, they're just like, you should have had something that kept things like this from happening.
Well, like, I mean, if the guy has a slush fund for this project, the owner already paid for that. So, you know.
Well, it's a slush fund for all projects. It's not everybody's unreasonable.
But I mean, that's got to be built into your overhead at some point. So it's like the customer's paying for it one way or another. Maybe some other customers are paying for it too.
Yeah.
No, I find
that amazing.
No, and I think that, you know, that relationship with your customers, it should be give and take, and that there's always every situation's different, and you have to make a judgment call. I mean, I'm even sitting here before the podcast, and I'm typing up a final invoice because my electrician had an emergency surgery. I didn't get his bill till late. The people owe me money. It's been like 2 months since I've done the job, and they were just super nice to work for. And I'm writing up the bill, and I'm like hourly rate for extra work, and I'm like knocking my number down because I'm like, you know what, in this situation they did this, they didn't hassle me about that, and you know, I can cut them a break here and save them a little bit of money. This is work that they added that I wasn't supposed to do in the first place. And you know, it's the situation where they were really good customers. They were super generous with me, no complaints, very easy to work for. So I'm going to kind of reciprocate and do my best with what I can. Even, you know, the changes from the electrician, like I marked up the electrician's normal number and I now have the changes from the electrician. I'm like, I didn't really have much more management on this. Like, I think the fair thing to do is just have them, you know, whatever the balance I owe the electrician, they're just going to pay that number rather than me making a markup on them. Where honestly, if you were a shitty customer and you were just a pain in the ass, like my markup would be on that number 100% because like you didn't cut me any slack. You didn't treat me well. I'm not going to do the same for you. And I think, you know, every situation with every customer is going to be different.
But Tyler, in that example, like, you're making this concession that they'll never know about, they'll never appreciate, like the pocket door that you upgraded. Yeah. It's like, and if it was another 40%, they would have just paid it.
No, they'll pay it, and I know, but like, so my invoice, they will know at this point too, because any change order work, it's in my contract that it's an hourly price, right? So they have a rate from previous change order work. This isn't change order. They just were like, hey, while you're here, can you paint? So I wasn't supposed to. And it's time and material. So it's like, if my rate was X amount for the other work, it's going to be X minus whatever I feel. And like they, you know, I will indicate that to them because I don't I want to show my appreciation. I'm not doing it because I want something more, but I want to be like, hey, you guys were really great customers.
I think you like if you're communicating like, hey, good customer discount 10% or whatever it is. Like, yeah. Now at that point, like they've been so great this whole time. Now it's a little kickback for them. They feel even better. And it's like, I don't think you shouldn't make any money off it. I think but a discount like that benefits both. You still make money, and they feel like because like you said, they're going to pay it if there wasn't a discount. So give them the discount 100%. And it's like, now it feels great.
Yeah. And like Eva, I said with the electrician, so it went from like whatever it was, if it was 5,000 and now it's 6,000, like I just got the final bill from him. I've been waiting on the bill because he's been sick, and it's like, you know what? They can pay the extra $1,000 to the electrician. I don't necessarily need to make a markup on that because I still managed the work the same. Like they added work, but it didn't give me any more time or create any more time for me to be there or make my life any harder. So for a good customer like that, in this instance, this situation, it's like just I made money on the job. I don't need to make a markup on that. And that's kind of like a little bit to show my appreciation for how they treated me the entire project. That's how I'm going to say thanks to them. And it's not giving anything away for free. And I know where my numbers are on the job, but I think that our business as well as design, it's a two-way street. You can't dig your heels in, and it can't just be one way. And I think that you need to give and take in this industry.
Well, and I would imagine that their appreciation will manifest itself in speaking well and recommending you to other people. And it's just that the last taste of this sounds gross. Let me see if I can't rephrase it. I was going to say the last taste of you they have in their mouth is a positive one.
I'm gonna get that on.
Thanks for listening to the Modern Craftsman podcast, guys.
I'm gonna get T-shirts made. You're gonna love the taste we leave in your mouth.
My
you know what? You can take that. I'll give that to you. You can use that.
Underneath
the promo, don't worry.
Hyphen Bob Borson.
I don't need credit. I don't need credit for that.
You're getting the credit.
I'm gonna put it on the truck.
Yeah, but we do that. We do that too on occasion. Like I think I remember it was about a year ago, we were doing a project and these clients were awesome. I mean, they're just like, when you get those ones and like everything about, they're fun to work with. They appreciate what you do for them. Like everything, they're the bell cow. They're awesome. Every facet. And we were doing really great financially on the project, and they weren't making our lives hard. And so I gave them a huge discount. And on our bill, like we list everything that we did. I mean, it's a long bill because it says I spent an hour on this and 45 minutes on that. And we kind of break all that stuff down. And at the end, we add it all up, say, here's a number. And then we gave a credit back and it said, because you're awesome. And it was about $12,000. And we didn't have to do it, but we did it because we were doing really good on that project and they were awesome. And we wanted them to know that we thought they were awesome.
Yeah. And I think, it comes down to the numbers on the job too, right? If you didn't make money on the job, that's a foolish thing to do. Yeah. But if you made money on the job and you made your margins and you think it's the right thing to do, it's a long career. And with what I do and working on smaller portions of people's home, it's typically I'm going to get hired again. And I think that it's just, it's giving back to somebody who treated you well. And it's the same thing. If I had a customer who was a pain in the ass and these things happen, like I'm just going to keep my normal rate. And I'm just going to, we had to mark up the whole job. The markup's going to be there. But I think that, you can show your appreciation, and it should be two-way. It shouldn't just be about you. It's not just about you in this entire process of building and renovating.
Young architects learn this lesson. It's pretty common that, architects when they're younger in their career will do a lot of moonlighting, because architects we get paid garbage. It's ridiculous. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is when you're 26 years old and you're not licensed yet, but you've got all this energy and enthusiasm, and maybe you don't get to design it where your job is. So you take on these little side projects, little side hustle. And you're trying to figure out, like, you don't know how much you should charge. Right. And so you're like, okay, well, I'll give them a break because I'm so excited to get this work. Like, this is a really great opportunity for me. And what you find is that the people who, you try to give the best discounts and like try to appreciate, say, this is a big deal and I'm going to try to help you out. They're the people that seem to abuse you the most. Whereas the people that, if you say, I'm charging you full rate, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, then I won't ask all these dumb questions, or I shouldn't say it that way. Ask questions that aren't really your responsibility, or because now they're like, well, I don't want to get hit for all these fees. And so it's like every young architect learns at a certain point that you go, your buddy discount is, I'm either going to do it for free, right? And you get what I got when I have to get it, and you can't complain. There's no deadlines, and like you just get what you get, and you're not paying for it. But if you want all the rights that come along with paying for something, like deadlines and deliverables and accountability and responsibility, and you got to pay for that. And it takes getting burned once or twice for most architects to kind of learn that lesson when they're younger, for certain. But then it kind of migrates away from it.
Was it Mike Telich that said that? It's when you work for friends, there's only two options. You have to be able to afford to do it completely for free, or they pay full price. There's no. It might have been Mike Telich.
I don't know. I know I say that all the time. Like that's one reason why I don't want. I mean, if I work for family or I work for friends, like it's the normal price or it's free. Anything in between, you're screwed, because like
now someone owes someone.
Yeah, they're upset because, you know, you didn't do it for free, or, you know, you were late delivering the project when you're helping them out. It's one of those things where like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So you might as well you do it for free and there's zero expectations, or you do it for full price and then you execute like you would for anyone else.
Well, the way I look at it is, you know, if you go to a yard sale, things are negotiable. But when you go to like, you know, Best Buy, there's a line. Somewhere it's determined that there's a line where you're not going to Best Buy going, you know, it says $1,400 for the iPhone, but what do you say? You know, give me a little bit of, you know, I don't know, maybe throw the earbuds in for free. Like it's how it's presented. You get me? The way that Best Buy has it and the whole process is done that way. But if that salesperson came over and insinuated that there was a rebate or that there was a sale on this and there was something that could be discounted, you would then look at that whole store. I mean, your head would perk up from that iPhone spot and go, yo, what else is on sale? And meaning I could be crazy. It's okay. But it's like, as soon as that mentality has been set, it's like, now it isn't how to run the project. It's how to understand the expectations of what you've just opened. And it's like, you go to the yard sale, 100%. Once you get a deal on one thing, everyone's watched American Pickers. Then you do the next one. You try and get a better deal on that. And it's like this never ending cascade of BS. So define it. It's 100% defined. And maybe like Best Buy has a rewards program. Maybe that's what you have for your business. That other thing you talked about with the $80,000 thing, that was 1% of that project cost from the Eat That. So I get the value there.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's the same thing with change orders. I feel too. For a long time, I felt that, you know, value that I was bringing to my customers was going to be that we had everything under control. We knew going in what it was going to cost, and that our number was our number. And, you know, that was a big selling point for me, and that, you know, customers knew they were locking me in, and I would just kind of eat things and go along with things because I should have accounted for them. I should have known. And I'm working in all old homes. Nothing is known. Nothing's the way it's going to be. And, you know, I got to a point where I proved that I could do that, but I also proved that it wasn't the best way to run my business. And now it's like, if there's work that's not in the scope of work, or it's additional or unforeseen, then they're going to get charged for that. And they're going to get charged for that from day one, so that they know work that wasn't included is going to be changed. And if at the end of the job we're profitable and they were good customers and we enjoyed working for them, if there's additional at that point, we can then choose whether we want to cut a break or not. but I'm not going to start that up front of the job where we start giving things away at demo stage, like you said, John, and then you're screwed because halfway through the job, when there's a big miss or an unforeseen or something happens, and all of a sudden you're starting to charge them change orders, they're going to be like, well, you know, he didn't have enough money on this job. He's trying to recoup now. And they're not really going to, I feel like, be on board with what you're doing, where if you set the tone right away, then it's you get paid. And at the end of the job, you know, you can be as equitable as you want.
You know, my wife, I kind of alluded to her being kind of tough earlier. Part of her job is she negotiates huge contracts for the company she works for. And she would tell me the story every now and then, and it's kind of shaped the way I think about things. And it would be like, she'd say, I'm talking to 5 vendors and we have a $5 million project that we're asking them to provide numbers on. And so they're giving their presentations and we're asking them, bring me your best price, right? That's what I want. Bring me your best price. So they all come in and one guy's at 6 million, 2 people are at 5 million, one's at 4, one's at 2, right? Or whatever, something crazy. And so when she tells the person who's at 6, like, hey, you're out because you were the high bid, right? And we're looking for 5. And they go, well, we could probably go to 5. Then she's like, why didn't you just tell me 5 in the beginning? Like, why? You should tell me what things cost. What I asked for was not give me like some buddy price. Give me your best price and then just live with it. Just live with that price. And what I found a lot of times is that people are always trying to say like, hey, if something costs X and I think I can get it for a little bit more than that, they're going to try to ask for that, which on one hand is not unreasonable. But when you don't get the project because you're the high bid, and then you come back and go, oh, I can charge less. I can charge less. It's not right either, because now all of a sudden I go, well, you didn't do what I asked you to do, and you didn't say what you were going to do, and you're charging me more than you need to charge for one reason or another. So there's a certain amount of credibility that gets damaged when you
you said it's not right either.
Those kind of games.
I think it's way worse. Like if a contract, if a sub comes to me and says they want last look, and I'm like, all right, I can respect that if it's like within a couple $100, and then it's the gap's bigger. Like we had this, it was like $10,000, and it came back. It was actually a different project I'm actually thinking of, where the client painted the outside of the house the color they wanted through the design, and then they walked away one day, certain light, and go, I can see a little bit of pink in this. They're like, so we want to put another coat, slightly tweak it, and put one more coat over the whole house. So I call the painter. I go, hey, can you do one more coat? He's like, yeah, it's going to be like 14G. And I'm like, that was the original cost to have it prepped and do 3, like primer and 2 coats. How is that possible? This is what happens behind the scenes. And I go, okay. I call another painter. I go, hey, we're going to change it to this color. You know, it's already been prepped. You have to do a little bit of sanding. And it was like $7,200. So I hired that guy on the spot. And then the other painter showed up because he's still doing the interior and goes, what'd you do? I go, I gave it to the guy because I couldn't go to the client and go, I'm going to charge you double, right? Just because you're annoyed. And he goes, I would have matched that price. Now I'm like, dude, fuck
what?
off.
Yeah.
You don't belong in my whole Rolodex of people that I trust, because you're just playing a game. Go work for somebody else that's the game. But it's so much more disrespectful when, and again, there's 2 different things here, because my wife did, you know, public bidding on stuff, and you are trying, you know, that everything's underbid on public bidding. So you are trying to squeeze the most out of it. Otherwise, you're being as detailed as possible so you can get change orders. The game in municipality is the change order game, in my opinion. That you have to be on top of change orders, because otherwise you're going to get lit up. But when it's the stuff that we do, and that's why I keep that spreadsheet. That spreadsheet needs to be the advocate for the multipliers and the square footage. Like how much is a fixture per fixture? Is it $1,400 a fixture? Is it growing? Is it not? So my plumber prices something like right now, we're adding laundry to this area, and it's like $5,600. And I'm like, yo, that's high. So I'm like, I go back to him and I go, it's almost insulting if I go to him and go, hey, it's someone else's prices, even though you've done all the other plumbing in the house. Like, I'm not going to make that. I'm not going to pull the plug and switch it up for the laundry. So I'm like, hey, if I do my math, again, it sounds so immature. My spreadsheet says it should be like $4,200, but that's what I got to do, because I'm playing that role of I'm an advocate for the budget when the client's not. So this is my job. So now I can go back to the client and go, hey, it's at $4,200. No one's got their hard feelings, but we'll try and make sure it's easily, navigated through this house for the new plumbing. But my point is just someone has to hold not the accountability, but the accuracy key for these things. Otherwise, it can go off the rails so easy. I could have easily said yes to $14,000 for that another coat of paint and go, you're right. 15 years ago, I probably would have.
I'll come up there and do it.
Right? I probably would have. But it's like
I'll come up there and do it.
You might get someone with white hair.
I'll come hang out.
But John, what about the situation where you have somebody, or Bob, you have somebody who says our number is 6 and then we can do it for 5. If you can do it for 5 and it's the same product, that's horse shit. If you give somebody the option of, hey, we can do it for 5, but you're not going to get this, and this, or, it's not going to have this level of appliances. You're going to have to go down with the countertops here. Your kitchen cabinets can only be this. We have to go with this painter instead of that painter. That's where specs and level of expectation and communication with the customer also comes into play a lot, because they're two different things. Like 5 and 6 are two different projects there. Maybe you can do it for both. I can do it for 5. I can do it for 6. But what do you want? What's important to you?
Well, I just did this. We demoed this whole product, and I had gone through his specs crazy because he was the lowest bidder. We had 4 bidders that bid the demo, and by far, the client and I were like, even if I throw $10,000 of management on this thing to make sure we're still under everyone else by 20. So we're like, let's go with that. They did miss the basement. It was kind of this gray area. The basement ceiling wasn't on any of the line items, but it was included. I'm like, all right, tell me what the number is. And he's like, it's $4,000 to take just the ceiling. And I'm like, man. I'm looking at it going, we deducted this other room off to the side because we knew we were going to rip it off with a machine. And I go, so that room we deducted because it was in the proposal. We deducted it was $2,700. The square footage of wall, ceiling, all this stuff is X amount of square feet. If I use the ceiling as this square footage, I go, I'm looking at $2,700. So tell me where I'm off if we're basing it off of square footage. He goes, well, it is a ceiling. It's different than the walls. And I get it priced out where I have 2 guys just lumping it to the dumpster, and I got 3 guys pulling. So he did what you just said, Tyler. And I go, so what if we do a 3-man crew? It takes an extra day, but I'm having 1 guy lump to the dumpster and 2 guys pulling. Can we get closer to what we need to do? He goes, yeah, I can do it for 3. So I wasn't offended by what he came up with.
I mean, he justified it.
But we negotiate. I wasn't like, dude, come to 3, but still give me 5 guys.
Yeah.
So I think it goes hand in hand. How do you want to navigate that? So when I go back to the client and go, hey, this is $3,000 and it was 5, got him to 3. This was comfortable because it's going to take an extra day, but schedule isn't a priority on this part. So,
so what you're talking about is value, right? And you're trying to find the appropriate balance between product and cost. And because if someone doesn't appreciate the more expensive item, or they can't tell the difference between something and its less expensive alternative, how can there be any value in paying for it, right? So sometimes we're just identifying this. There is, have you guys ever heard, there's a guy named John Ruskin, who, this is a deep cut, by the way, who was a 19th century socialist.
Oh, and he has no,
he has
know.
I was going to say,
kill that guy.
I'm friends with him on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring him up is he has a thing that he put together that you've probably come across before. Maybe you just didn't know it's him, and it was called the Common Law of Business Balance. And it basically is, the premise of it is that there's hardly anything in the world that somebody can't make a little worse and sell it for a little less. And that people who consider just price by itself are willing victims to that person, because he's saying it's unwise. Like you're not smart if you pay too much, but it's worse to pay too little for something, because when you pay too much, you lose a little bit of money. That's about it. But if you pay too little, sometimes you could lose everything because the thing that you bought is incapable of doing the thing that it was supposed to do. Right. And so the premise of that is that the common law of business balance prohibits paying a little and getting a lot. Right. So in your line of work, and to an extent, my line of work, this is an incredibly insightful and useful piece of information, because I'll talk about this with clients a lot when they're saying, well, why would I choose this person over that person? And so we talk about, well, that's value. You can only determine what value is. And if you think paying X and getting Y seems right, or if you think, well, it's not worth it, then they're just going to obsess over how much they're paying versus what they're getting, right? If they can't appreciate why something is better than another thing, they'll never understand why they should pay more for it. But at a certain point, if all they're doing is trying to find out how they can get something on the cheap, those are bad clients. I think those are the people you don't want to get in bed with, because like everything can go south. In fact, this is another kind of amusing story. Years ago, we did a project for a guy, and he came in and he's like, I have $1 million and I want to build my dream house. Right. So we designed it, had it bid, right? This was like 15 years ago.
Nick's like 500 square feet.
Yeah. I have my dream closet I want to build. I have $1 million.
No plumbing, right?
Yeah, no plumbing. So we designed it and we sent it out. It was competitively bid, and all the bids came in within about $100,000 of one another, right around $1 million. And we're thinking, we nailed it. Like, we killed this. And the guy goes, I want it to cost less. Like, he expected it to come in higher than that, and we'd have to do things to get it down to $1 million, but it came in right where it's supposed to. So he's like, well, wow, why don't we see if we can't get a little lower? I'd like to get it to $800,000. And we're like, okay, what do you want to get rid of? And he's like, well, I don't want to get rid of anything. I just want to keep asking more people to bid it until someone finally agrees to build it for $800,000. And we're like, it doesn't work like that. Like, it's not supposed to work like that. You don't want it to work like that, because if I have 3 bids and they're all like around $1 million, and your only goal is to keep asking what it's going to cost until it gets to where you want, you're giving up something for sure. And so he goes, well, will you drop your fee? And one of the partners was like, I'm not financing your dream house. Like, no, I'm not dropping my fee. And so eventually we gave this guy a half set of drawings and said, go knock yourself. You can talk to whoever you want. And we kind of washed our hands of it. And he ended up finding a contractor who bid it, and he came in at like it's $780,000. And he brought it into the office, and the senior partner at the time said, all right, I'll look through it and I'll ask the guy and see how he got to this. Like, how did he get $200 and something thousand out of this number? Turns out he scaled the half size set of drawings. So like the amount of sheetrock he used was like half as much as it was supposed to be.
So he was expensive then.
But why would your boss even let that back in?
It's a performance issues, failures, I guess. I don't know. You know,
to me, it's like, don't let the snake back in.
Personally or business?
He has this fear of failure at the time. Like, he had a very good standing in a certain community. And so anyone in that community, like, when they wanted something done, they went to him, and he wanted to maintain his reputation for being helpful in that community. So when this person came back and said, hey, will you look at this again? His default was always, yes, I will see what I can do to help. Right. So he was kind of doing this it was kind of like that guy paying that $80,000 for something that wasn't his fault either. He wanted everybody to have a good taste of him in their mouth. So
Jesus. Really good.
Anyway, so if you're not familiar with that, yeah, look it up. John Ruskin.
I mean, that's the secret to a return customer. Leaving them with a good taste in their mouth.
Yes, that's true in so many ways.
100%.
Oh, look, it comes up. I clicked on it, and it was Life of an Architect, and your article comes up. Huh.
That's funny. Maybe I'm the only one who ever talks about it. Anyway, there's some in your line of work, you would think that this would be something that you could use to help educate your clients on, helping them understand why should they pay 6 when they could pay 5, right? Like, you could pay 5, you could probably pay 4, but are you willing to concede the difference between what 6 gets you versus what 4 gets you? And sometimes they are.
And at that point, even when that guy turns to you and says, you know, let's send this out to see how many more people, to me, you know, after doing this for a while, that just tells me that his biggest priority and what he values the most is a number. And it's not necessarily like his dream house is about getting whatever its square footage or a few certain details, but then it's getting a certain price for that house. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's plenty of builders who build kind of that way, but you're not valuing what we do as a company. So I think at that point it's like you cut your ties and go find, if that's what's most important to you, then you need to find people who are willing to run with that.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, we did cut ties, and we have all kinds of, here's another one for you. And I wrote about this as on the secret as I could on my site, but we had a project that we were doing for this young couple. And the wife worked as an admin in another architectural company, right? They just didn't do residential work, but she came to us. We had a good reputation, but she had access to all their materials and their product binders and all that kind of stuff. And then she would come in and she'd say, I want to use this sink. And we're like, that's a remodel sink that goes in a corner in a tiny bathroom. And we don't have a tiny bathroom. So why would we use this little stupid sink? And it's because she liked it. It was pretty straightforward for her. Well, at one point, she used to talk, I called it scoreboarding. We have a phrase in our office when people try to scoreboard someone else. Like, you guys are familiar with this. Like, let's say, Johnny, you and Tyler are playing basketball, and Tyler's a better basketball player, but you win, right? And you're like, haha, I win. He's like, yeah, but I'm better. You can just say scoreboard, right? Like, I don't need to prove anything. Scoreboard.
No, it's like scoreboard.
That's right. So
I'm definitely saying that to my wife.
Yeah.
Once and then never again.
Yeah. So we have a phrase that we just call scoreboard. And so this woman, she came in and she goes, I want 14-foot high ceilings everywhere in the house. And we're like, that's a terrible idea. Because some rooms aren't big enough to warrant a 14-foot. Like a
3x8 powder room, which is
like coat closets, 14 foot, like everything 14 foot. And we're like, why does this matter to you? Like, why are you holding on to this so much? And she goes, well, my friend just did her house and she's got 12-foot ceilings. And I was like, are you kidding me? You got to be kidding me. Like, this is there a camera somewhere recording my face here? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So she leaves and I go back to my office and I'm working on the project. And finally I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. So I walk into my boss's office and I go, we need to quit this job. I don't want my name on it, right? I don't want our firm's name on it. This is stupid. I don't want to be a part of it. She goes, okay, set up a meeting. Let's fire him. And I was like, terrific. So I send an email out and I'm like, dear Mr. and Mrs. 14-foot ceilings, can you guys come into the meeting, come into the office? We need to have a meeting. I didn't say I was going to fire him, right? We need to have a meeting. And secretly, because that's when we're going to fire you. The husband responds and goes, I'm way too busy for this. My wife can handle everything, right? I don't need to be a part of it. And I'm like, we kind of need you both to come in for this meeting. And he's like, I can't come. And I go, well, we're not in a rush. Like, whenever you have time, that's when we can set the meeting. And he goes, you don't listen, you're fired. And I was like, what? No, we were going to fire you. and we got sacked from the job because I was trying to fire him from us.
I broke up with you first.
For not listening. That's what happened.
Scoreboard.
I know. He scoreboarded me without even knowing it. God, drives to this day. It's been like 15 years and I still remember. That one still stings. And I told the partner, I go, we got fired for not listening, right? Because I kept trying to get him to come to the meeting. And she goes, well, great. That's what we wanted.
Yeah.
And I go, there's no satisfaction to this, though. I have no satisfaction.
Yeah, now they get to tell their friends that they fired you.
Yeah, they fired us because we don't listen.
And they probably have 14-foot ceilings right now.
No, they probably never built the project.
Yeah,
so
and I'm sure they have, and they have glass block all through their house too. Another delightful material.
Oh,
it's coming back.
I mean, when it's used in the right context, it's not that.
Yeah, nope, never.
Like in a jacuzzi.
No, never. There's never a time when glass block is appropriate.
How about if you have like a tropical style bar? There is, if you're French, maybe you have a chance at using it appropriately. But I'm going to say, and don't send me pictures of glass brick.
I'm definitely sending you. Oh,
wait, why can the French use it?
Because they're the ones that came up with it originally. There's a couple projects
between glass brick and block.
Like the stuff that's like you can't see through, kind of.
Well, no, we all know what glass block is,
6 by 6, like 4-inch thick. Yeah.
Glass brick is actually like a piece of cast glass.
Okay.
Right. And there's a couple of projects, especially like in Japan, that use it, and it's pretty awesome stuff.
I bet I can find. I'm gonna find
glass block is no good.
It's the worst. It's like having glaucoma in a building material. That's all it does.
Rach, take that glass block, throw it out. We're not using it.
To the 2 million people that listen to this on a weekly basis, Bob Borson on Instagram, send him photos of good glass block.
It won't happen. It won't happen. They've tried. People have tried for a decade because they know that I don't like it. It's no good. It's no good. You can just film a piece of regular glass and achieve the same thing so much better. And you know what? Most people use it. You kind of go, that's because there's a toilet room behind that window. Like whenever you see it, you're like, well, that's where the toilet is.
Can't believe you're saying that doesn't work for you.
Oh, it's garbage.
Why do you put your bathrobe on?
Look at those radius corners there. But the other corner is not radius, just the one side.
Dang.
I even wrote a blog. I wrote a blog post about it's called "Death to Glass Block," and I cover all this. It's like you cannot find an example that I would say that couldn't be done somehow better in a different way.
Man, these are actually
I would agree that. All right, I've been challenged.
Yeah, look, you should.
I mean, I've never actually seen it and been like, "Oh my gosh, that looks so cool!" But I feel like it's got to exist. No,
ugh. Yeah. See,
I didn't even know you could radius them.
That's like a custom radius end. I think Nick should integrate this into one of his next projects.
I think so.
It'd be cool if they could put stuff inside of them, like
fish,
little trinkets. Yeah,
army men.
Yeah, like they build the boats inside of bottles. Glass block.
Yeah,
oh wait,
maybe.
Wait,
you might be onto something here.
Nah, I think this is just adhered to it, but that would be cool.
Oh, no, it's still not cool.
Yeah,
it's still bad.
Yeah, but this one they did a feature band of like what looks like prehistoric resin glass block in the middle. That's
like there's
it also sucks to
mosquitoes
demo.
In there.
I've only demoed it once, but that stuff doesn't break. Like that's like smashing out solid concrete block.
Did you salvage it so that you could use it in another project?
I did not.
Yeah,
I damaged the floor I demoed it on.
Really?
Yeah. Tyler's coming around on this. He's coming around. He's like, he's right. I cannot find a picture.
He's
that's
like
not total garbage.
I mean, it's all really bad. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna argue the fact that the only chance it would ever have is if it were clear and you could see through it. Like,
yeah, which it's not.
I mean, I found one that's clear and it's not half as bad, but there's no situation that I would use that except for maybe if I bought like an old creepy van and I wanted a window in it, I would like put one of them in. Yeah.
Well, look, if you guys, I wrote a post once and I can't believe some of the stuff I've talked about that I've gotten away with. And it was titled, "This Make My Face Hurt." And it's because I drove by, the grammar's bad on purpose. And I was describing this house and I go, it looks like somebody hit it with a poo fist, right? That's how ugly it is. And what they did is on this one elevation facing this major road, every window was different on this elevation. Like they all engaged like the soldier course at the top of the wall, like some are below, some are above. It was a mess. But what happened is they ended up taking what was clearly a bathroom and they did a pattern of what was probably 6x6 or 4x4 glass block. And they arranged it in this window, but they put kind of a Swiss cross, like a plus sign in the middle of it. So you had like a 4x4 and a 4x4, then a 2x4 piece. But what happened is when the Swiss cross came together, it left a hole in the middle, right? They don't make 2x2 glass block. You can't get it. So in this part 1 post I wrote, they put duct tape over that opening.
Really?
Right? So that's how they solved it. And I was like, I'm going to keep an eye on how they're going to solve this. Like, what are they going to do? And the phase 2 solution is they actually like mortared in a tile of, I said it was like the Virgin Mary, but it was like the Guadalupe Saint somebody or of Guadalupe or whatever. And it's the worst install job you've ever seen in your life.
This sounds incredible.
You're like, but so clever.
Do you know what's coming to my mind? That we need to start a company that starts making smaller glass tile to solve these problems.
There's an opportunity here for you, Tyler. All it needs is for you to take that step.
I'm still looking at these. They are all so bad.
Yeah, 100% of the time they're terrible. So, so I gave you the business idea for glass block, right? A bunch of them there. New T-shirt idea for the phrase to put on in the side of your truck.
That's true. I'm pretty much set. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm a giver. So
I'm a giver who leaves a. All right, let's
a good taste in your mouth.
My gosh.
Yeah, this is it's funny because of the Rachel's Lake House, her parents have one of them. This is what I feel like people use them for when homeowners need to infill a doorway that they pulled out or like a window between two rooms. They that's their go-to solution is the glass block wall. Yeah. And then for a while, her parents were really into one of their friends was doing stained glass, and he was making stained glass button-down Hawaiian style T-shirts. So it was it was a T-shirt that was like Hawaiian T-shirt but stained glass, and they hung that in front of the glass block wall. And then I think it broke.
Wow.
I think it broke one day, and Rachel was like, "Oh man, what a shame!"
It broke everybody's eyeballs every day.
Gosh,
that sounds really bad.
I think it was nice. I think she liked it.
Yeah. So
I think if anyone has a chance at making this work, though, it's definitely Nick.
It might be my new pet project.
Yeah.
Just figure out how to make glass block work.
He still thinks you're still thinking that you can make this happen. I'm telling you right now, it can't happen.
I know, but that makes me want to do it more. And I know you're just saying that, so I do it, and it's a whole thing, and we gain followers off of it, and we become famous, and all that good stuff. But I really want to do it.
You know what? Well, I see the feed. And if glass block shows up on there,
you're out.
I'm gonna go #unfollow.
Yeah, take my podcast down. Don't ever talk to me again. I'm not answering you my DMs.
Credibility diminished.
Bob, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, you talked about your specific work and how you have become known for a life as an architect, but that because of that, your work has went from Houston, Texas to all over the country. I don't know if it's the world at this point, but what does that look like?
So it's a good question. It's kind of a hard question because it's kind of esoteric, but I think that architects are service providers, right? We're in a personality business, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you're hiring me because my criteria or like the things that I offer is I can give you a 5-bedroom, 5-bath house that doesn't leak. If that's the only thing that you need, I'm not your guy, right? There are people you can hire that are way less expensive than I am.
Right.
If that's the only criteria that you have.
Right.
So because of the site that I have, it's pretty educational. It's pretty informal. I like to think that I have a pretty good personality and a good sense of humor. So it's not dry reading, even if it's
so
technical.
far so good. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some things in there that make it not a complete time suck. So what happens is you kind of project, and I'm sure you guys see this in your own social media feeds. People feel like they know who you are, right? And one of the best compliments I receive now is when people meet me, they go, "You are exactly how I thought you would be," right? Which that's a really, really thing that I take a great amount of pride in, right? That I'm not one way socially and publicly, and then I'm a giant tool, in real life. I mean, that would be a disappointing, reality that I don't want to be. So what ends up happening is people go, he seems honest. He seems trustworthy. I like him. I like his personality. And what they get is they get the experience, right? And so we typically say, like, we're good architects. We're good designers. We'll treat you right. We're not liars. We're not cheaters. We're going to do everything, and you're going to have a good time. You're going to enjoy this process. And it's amazing how much that resonates with people. Like, I don't have to show them, here's 500 Cape Cods I've done in order for someone to hire me to do a Cape Cod. I get hired because they think I'm nice, I'm honest, I do what I say I'm going to do. I'm conscious and, or considerate. Conscientious was the word I was looking for. Hopefully conscious is not the only requirement.
We just had somebody on the podcast whose name was the Conscious Builder, and I asked him why it wasn't the Conscientious Builder.
And what did he say?
He had a very long, drawn-out explanation for it. I still feel like it should be the Conscientious Builder.
Yeah, conscientious.
That's what I said. So like the opposite of you would be the Unconscious Builder.
Yeah, that would be bad. So we talk about an experience, right? Like, and I would imagine, Nick, you kind of go, we do lots of things really good, but one of the takeaways you would probably say you're most proud of, or at least I would advocate that you would, is that people enjoy the process. Like they come out on the other end enriched for having done the project with you as opposed to just anybody. And that's what we talk about a lot. So we get hired, like the project we're doing in Wyoming, it's a lodge style house, right? It's the first lodge style heavy timber, ICF house I've ever done. And I didn't get that job because I've done a million of them. I got it because the person likes me and they think that I'm a good person. And I go, that's a good reason to hire somebody. Of all the things that you can do to measure, like you could be great at what you do and a complete jerk, and you're going to have a horrible experience. So that's what that manifests itself for us is that as a result, I live in Dallas, but we have projects in Houston going right now. We have projects in Wyoming going right now. We have one in San Antonio that's going. I don't have any in Dallas, which is what's funny. And I think that's a result of people who find me. They find me from all over the place digitally rather than me bumping into them at some cocktail party here locally.
Yeah, I think that building design, most people are coming to you and they're building, they're coming to you for a custom house or their dream house. And I think that you don't realize how important that experience should be. And obviously the final product you want to be a certain way. But I think that, taking that experience and walking through that entire process and ensuring that you like that person, that you share the same core values, that you get along with that person, will make that entire build and that design so much more enjoyable for everyone than just, hey, we really like their work. Because you can really like somebody's work and they're a dick, and it's a miserable experience. And, you're spending a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of headaches. There's going to be a lot of issues that you run into. You really want somebody by your side who you get along with, who you can trust, which is extremely important, and who you just generally like as a person. And that interview process shouldn't just be about their portfolio. And if you can design a good Cape Cod, it needs to be more so personality and values, and that you enjoy their process as well. It's not just about the build.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, if after listening to this podcast, if there's one thing I want people to take away, is that I'm not a dick.
Yep. Yep. Well, I'm glad you cleared the air because I was concerned.
It's important. It's an important it's a bullet point on our periodicals that we send out.
I'm not very social online, and I get people online when they kind of feel as though they know you and I've never met them. I get kind of creeped out by it, and then I shut down. So like these people who kind of want to be buddy and I've never met them and I just don't get close to people like that, it kind of freaks me out a little bit. And then I just start ignoring them, and then they think I'm a dick. So a lot of times when people meet me, they're like, well, you're not actually a dick. And I'm like, yeah, I just get creeped out when, you act like we're best friends. We've known each other our entire life and I've never actually met you. So that's the tough thing for me with social media, where it's like, all right, you're messaging me a little bit too much right now. I'm going to ignore you forever.
Maybe a slight overreaction, but I get it. I understand.
Yeah, that's a personal issue, but I'd also like to clear the air and say that I'm not a dick. It just may come off that way.
Episode 186. Tyler finally comes out. He is not a dick. Or 187.
Set the record straight. It only took a few years. But thanks for thanks for coaxing that out of me.
Like I said, I'm a giver.
Yeah, you've given a lot, man. I can't wait to make the T-shirts. I'm gonna go right on the website.
It must be all the wisdom with the gray, even though you're only 53.
It's white. It's not.
Yeah, it's
gray.
white. Sorry.
It's white.
With it came wisdom.
That's what my mom said. That because she's Indian, American Indian. She said this is an indication of early wisdom.
Really?
She's just yeah.
Wait, so your father's Norwegian and your mom's American Indian?
Yeah.
How the hell did they meet?
Well, they lived in the same apartment building.
So they weren't first generation.
No, well, you know what? My mom was from an area called Putnam, Texas, really, really small town. And my dad was from Minneota, Minnesota, which everybody up there was a Norwegian. They're either Lutheran or Catholic, everybody. So there's there's that Lake Wobegon thing that Garrison Keillor does. And all the Lutherans drive Chevys and all the Catholics drive Fords. And
Another
if somebody
deep cut.
dies. Yeah. You don't, oh my God, you guys, it's because I'm old, I guess. I know all this information. But that's how it is. He grew up in a place where they had the big store, and that's where you bought clothes and furniture and groceries, and had a population of 150, and they're all Norwegians. So his dad came over on the boat from Norway.
That's an interesting mix.
He's blue blood. My mom was 50%. She was half and half. None of which matters other than the fact I make the joke I'm not even going to say it. You know what? You guys have so much.
Dude,
you
me now.
Let's end the podcast. We got to end the podcast on this note. What are you going to say?
I was going to say I'm not a particularly hairy person, but I can. I think that from the neck down, I'm Indian, but my beard is definitely Viking. I can grow a Viking beard.
So Indians typically are not hairy.
They're not super hairy, folks.
Maybe I'm part Indian. I'm either that or one of those cats that doesn't grow hair. My whole body, no hair. Well, I can't grow chest hair or a happy trail. I have 6 chest hair. 3 of them come out of a mole, which would be blonde if they weren't coming out of a mole. But
this is a high note. This should be the end of it right there.
This could be our best. Yeah. This could be our best episode.
My butt is hairy.
Okay.
Maybe it just settled.
Ryan Melkeen just rolled over and said, "Yes, I can attest to that."
Yes, but my head is very hairy. It went to my butt and my head. That's it. The rest of it got no hair.
Solid. Yeah. Solid information.
But I don't think I'm American Indian. Maybe a little.
23andMe it up, I guess.
No, my wife did all that stuff. I didn't want to because she wanted to fill out all the stuff about how predisposed you are to dying of certain diseases. I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to know all that stuff.
Yeah.
When it come out, it's going to come out in 20 years from now that there's just people guessing.
Yeah.
On the back end of that.
Just switch and spit around.
Yeah. Yeah. And so everyone's changed their life and whatever.
23 and everyone else.
Yeah.
23. It's the number of texts. That's the number of texts that are just sending out fake information.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
Bob, for those that want to find out more about you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, they should just go to lifeofanarchitect.com.
How often do you publish content up there?
Once a week.
Nice.
Because I just do a straight up, sometimes a little bit more than that. So I do every Mondays. I put something out.
And that's blog format?
Yeah, it's blog format. But we do, we have a podcast that I started because, again, I've been doing the blogging for so long. I was kind of bored with it and always trying to find something new. So I started a podcast about 2.5 years ago.
Nice.
And it's the same name, lifeofanarchitect.com. And I have a co-host, and he'll write a post every now and then because, there were times when we would talk about something and people would only ask me because everybody associates me with Life of an Architect because it's been around for so long. And I was like, well, you have to manifest in other ways than being my Ed McMahon, right? You have to start doing these other things. and he's a professor down at Texas A&M University, so he gets kind of busy. So he doesn't publish as on schedule as I do because I've been doing it for so long. I have this like maniacal need to keep doing it, even though I hate it, if I'm being honest. And I'm sure you guys will get at this at some point. Like there are times you're just like, we've done it. Check that box. I'm ready to try something else and not dedicate, this time to doing something that I feel like I've got it figured out. So yeah, but Life of an Architect, wherever that is, you can probably find me.
Very cool, man.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. It was fun.
Dude, appreciate you being on.
Yeah, it kind of went the way I thought it was going to go.
Very, very professional. You probably prepared for it.
Yeah. No, you know what? I didn't. Idea what we were
big highlights were you wanted to make sure everyone knew you weren't a dick. You wanted to clearly define that you don't have hair from the neck down.
No, I think these are really. I think those were your statements. I'm just saying I'm following up and saying yes, that is true. I didn't talk about my butt hair, right? That's you.
Well, the stage is yours, my friend. The world is your oyster.
Yeah. Well, luckily, I've got a platform that I actually have. I've said it like 2 or 3 times on this one. So there are things that I've put on my site that this is a little takeaway. There are all these people out there that say they're social media experts and they'll tell you like, oh, you should do this and do that and publish on Tuesdays and all that. And I go, it's all garbage, right? Because that didn't exist when I started, and my numbers were huge, and it's because people connect with individuals. They don't connect with brands, right? And so I wrote posts on my site that no person who would say they knew anything about anything would ever advise me to write. I wrote a post about like urinals and like etiquette, like what urinal do you go to first when there's an even number or odd number? What does that look like? And all these kind of things. Nobody should talk about urinals as often as I've talked about urinals on my website.
It could be a fetish.
What's your opinion on them?
They're gross. I mean, they're super convenient, but this back in the early days, I was writing like 3 blog posts a week. And so a lot of times it was like, I just need something to talk about. And it was like some Sunday and I was at the movie theater and I went in there and it's hot down here and I'm wearing flip-flops and I go to the urinal to use it.
Think how much worse it'd be if you were hairy.
I don't want to think about how much worse it would be if that's okay. But I looked down and the floor's all wet and I was like, this is just disgusting. I'm like, everything about this is a horror show. So I wrote this whole post on, how urinals are gross and why can't we solve this? We can do all these amazing things and we can't solve why.
They did. They started putting the little bee sticker in the back of it. And
you got to aim for the side. So it just swirls around like a little
Just stand back further, pinch it like a garden hose. It sprays further.
Yeah. Look, every guy's got an opinion about this.
Well, dude, was it Fenway Park, Nick?
The trough.
They used to have like that massive trough.
Yeah. Oh my God, where you face each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no way. There is.
Yeah.
Who would do that?
Imagine taking a poop in one of them?
In the trough?
You wouldn't be facing anyone.
There was a place, I think it was Plattsburgh State, I played hockey.
That's why everyone was looking at me weird.
And the bathroom had no stalls. It was just like 6 toilets in a row with no stalls.
Yeah, dude, there's a bar in Philly, just like talk about deep cut, but it was like all these very, very small bands would go play there. And the men's bathroom, there was just no door on the toilet. And it just forever, that's the way it was. You'd walk in, go to the bathroom. Sure enough, there'd be a guy sitting there like going to the bathroom, pretty much open the door. You can like see the bar there. I feel like, I don't know. I couldn't swing that, but
if you have to do that kind of business, it's just time for you to go home.
Yep.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. Right. You're like, well, my night is done because
I got to poop and I'm not.
I got to go. I need a stall environment
and a door. I don't want to. I don't want to hover. Which brings me to when Nick pulled his phone out of a porta potty.
It was relatively clean.
It's not possible.
Yes, it was.
It was the first time that porta potty was ever used.
Unless it fell in the hand sanitizer, it was not clean.
It fell and it was like this.
No, it was. It was in the. It was just drunk people piss.
I watched that.
God.
Yeah, it's super clean. I watched that video.
Yeah, I cleaned it with hand sanitizer.
Oh God, there's no way.
Yeah, I would just let it go.
I mean,
If somebody wants it bad enough to reach in there and get it, it's theirs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Nick was that person.
Live
right.
along, my friend.
It was like
Next week, I got to post tonight. I got to get this shit.
it's
Wonder why-
Tuesday. I got to post. It's Tuesday.
This is why Nick is not getting COVID. He's pretty much immune to everything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
smell like White Claw.
You know, I imagine all this will get cut out because it's really not great audio, or
Nope.
maybe it is. I don't know.
No, this
It's all in.
This
we
is
don't
gold.
edit.
This is all gold.
Yeah.
I will say that I was at a
Yeah, I wanted to
crawfish
hear what was about
boil.
to come out because that was like a very nonchalant way.
Yeah. Hey, this
It's not that bad. No, so Acme Brick has one of their manufacturing plants just like 30 minutes up the road from where I live.
That was a cartoon.
And they would do Acme Brick, they're a big deal. And anyway, so they would hold this huge crawfish boil every year. I mean, invite architects and like everybody in the AEC industry would go out there, and there would be literally like 1,000, 2,000 people, a ton of people would do this. And so they would have all these porta-johns that are out there, and you guys are younger, so maybe this wasn't a big deal. They used to not have the little urinals on the side. It used to just be a bench with a hole in it. And so it was fairly new. And we had this woman who worked for us. She was the receptionist, and everybody was drinking beer and eating crawfish. I mean, a lot of people were loaded. I'll just say it. They were gone. And she came out and she was staggering. She came out of the porta-john and she's like, "That is the nicest porta-john I've ever been in." We're like, "What? Like, why was it so nice?" She goes, "Mine had a sink." And I was like, "A sink?" And she goes, "Yeah, and they had like fancy soap in there and it smelled good. But she goes, I couldn't find like how to turn on the water. I couldn't find like the tap. I don't know. Maybe it was incomplete." She goes, and the worst part about it is I was trying to like lather up my hands with the soap, right? And then it's like I don't know. So I got to go find somewhere to like rinse my hands off. Or like, don't anybody tell her that she just reached into the urinal and grabbed the urinal cake and wiped it all over her hands. And she's walking around going, "That was the greatest toilet I've ever been in."
It's disgusting. That is
Nick, that's not
disgusting.
that much different from what
No,
you did.
yes, it is.
It's a tie, I think.
My hand was not in the pee. I put my hand in a plastic bag. I took my phone
That's
out.
right.
It doesn't matter. The
And
fact
Did
then
yours
that
go
you
in
put
the
your
urinal,
arm-
or did it
No,
did it
it
go in
went
the
in the
bench?
No, it was there was 8 inches of liquid at the bottom, and I put my hand. I went over to I was at Gillette Stadium, and so they always have those plastic bags so the girls can empty their pocketbooks in them. And I asked for one. I reached in, I took my phone out, I squirted hand sanitizer, I cleaned it with some paper towels, and I went to the concert.
I would have left
Solid.
it. Those bags always
Nope.
have leaks in them. They always do. Did you ever go to pick up dog poop with them? Sure enough, there's a hole. Even when you
COVID
check,
started with
there's a
Nick.
hole. You're telling me you put that bag in fully submerged in water and it held? No
Yes.
way.
Yes, promise.
I
not
could
buying
not
it.
see this conversation when I started the call.
Really?
I couldn't
That
see it coming.
shocks me.
I feel like I'm going to lose a lot of credit at the end of this podcast. People are going to be like, "What the hell is wrong
Nick's
with
gonna
it?"
You know what,
cut it.
Nick? I'm going to say that I'm going to go on a
I'm
limb and
glad you
say
take this
I
out.
support you. I support you getting that phone.
Just don't shake his hand.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm with you.
High five.
Yeah. If my wife had done it, I would have told her to get that phone too.
Yeah,
And she would have been like, "You get my phone."
yeah, he would get my phone. All right, Bob. We've taken enough of your time today.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank
You
you.
rock, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, good one. See you later.
Cheers. That was a kick-ass podcast.
Yeah, that was actually pretty fun.
It
So
was really fun.
how many Santa Clauses has he been in as Tim Allen's double? I know there was at least 2.
He was a stunt double.
It was
Yeah.
funny because he didn't find it. He didn't find that comment that funny at first, and then I
He
realized
couldn't see us.
couldn't see us.
Yeah.
I was like, because later on in the show, then his humor opened up. I'm like, oh yeah, that wouldn't be funny if you're just hearing it over like a phone call.
Yeah. I'm glad he told us. What if he would
Yeah.
have gone the whole podcast
That would've
without
sucked
telling us?
for him. That would've
And we're
sucked.
staring at him.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Well, we got a review last week saying that this is a kick-ass podcast.
Oh,
Best looking group of guys.
Damn.
That's what it says.
They can hear that over the podcast.
That's
They
pretty
can
cool.
see it. Keep up the stellar podcast. I recommend this podcast to everyone I know in the construction industries. From Pete Cabinet. Thanks so much, dude. 956 ratings. We are closing in on 1,000, but not at the speed that we would like.
One every 4 weeks.
Wink, wink.
Santa Claus 3, 2006. That's the last one.
That was 2006.
The third one. I don't know if I've seen the third one. Definitely 2. 1 is good.
I graduated high school in 2006.
I graduated 2004. John?
He was
97.
97.
Yep.
Throwback.
I
Old
think that's when I
school.
graduated elementary school.
Old. I was born.
Thanks, guys. I look younger.
You do look young. You're part of the best looking group of guys, John. That's all that
Yeah.
matters, you know?
Yeah.
Wait till you guys see me when I get my hair cut tomorrow.
I
Oh, it's gonna be
cannot
tight.
wait.
Yep, it's gonna be nice. It's gonna be nice.
So
Guess
we
what?
gotta-
I'm seeing Chase next week.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you
He's
going
a
out
good
there?
guy.
Well, I'm going to Austin to film that thing, and then we have a wedding in Tahoe
awesome.
that like already was rescheduled because of COVID, so they're still going ahead with it. And it's like
Nice.
the north end of Tahoe that didn't burn so badly. So I made plans to fly in, meet him, go ride dirt bikes, then go up to Tahoe.
Sweet.
So see him next week.
Give him a big fat hug for me.
Oh well.
Lift him off his feet. And stuff.
He's big.
Yeah.
I can't lift him
I
off
know.
his feet.
Spin him around. Yeah, do it.
Wow.
I would do it for you. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I like usually don't see people. I'm like, whoa, that's a big dude. Because like I'm fairly tall, but I see him I'm like, you're a pretty big dude.
I can't wait to get a friend group DM on. You guys said I was big on the podcast.
Like teddy bear big.
Yeah,
Teddy bear
he's
big.
tall.
All right, guys, you know where to find us. Hit us up on Instagram. You guys want to give some feedback, Modern Craftsman. We have all actually opened up some consulting calls. So a little plug here. If you guys want to book some one-on-one time, there's a couple things with this, right? Number one, John, Tyler, myself, we are incredibly fortunate. And I think sometimes we forget how fortunate we are that we've been able to sit on this podcast for a couple years now and literally talk to almost 200 people in this industry for 2-3 hours at sometimes. And, selfishly, I can speak to it that I'm doing this to better my business, but, we open this also to help you guys in your business. But we still get, bombarded with messages and questions and things like that. And, we found, and Johnny really started the phone call thing, is that with these phone calls, we're able to dig into something specific and, and offer up, an hour. I think we're all offering an hour, but an hour of our time really uninterrupted, away from work, and be able to just kind of jam on something specific.
This is my mentoring notebook.
Okay, Johnny has a different color freaking notebook
Damn.
for everything he does.
I do. This is my black ones are for
work.
business.
Yeah,
And then
red one is for Modern Craftsman. I know.
This one's all tabbed out, so when I get when we do a second call with people, I'm starting where we left off, not regurgitating the whole thing. It's been awesome. I've really been enjoying it.
And Tyler, you've talked to a few as well, right?
This week.
You have them scheduled coming up?
Yeah, I didn't
That's
start
nice.
till scheduling things last week, so it's I don't do a good job of responding to DMs. People oftentimes ask me great questions. I don't have the energy or the mental capacity to stop what I'm doing all the time and devote the attention that people want towards me. And this is like a kick in the ass, that somebody signing up and spending their good money to have some of my undivided attention. So it's a good kick in the ass to kind of get me to do that and devote the necessary and proper time rather than giving somebody like a half-ass answer or respond. Like people respond respond to my response with DMs that like, these are your 2 of your responses that I get. And then I'll scroll up and I'm like, yeah, that's the only thing I've ever responded to them. Whoops.
Tyler, if they wanted to book a call, where's that link?
Through my Instagram page. So if you go onto the main profile, which you guys help me set this up because I am not tech savvy at all. So on my main page, there's a book now, which kicks you over to a scheduling website, which you can, get your payment information set up and book it right then. I have slots that are designated time slots that are available. And then if I approve the time slot, because week to week, it's not always the same, but I'm trying to block out a consistent amount of hours. So my schedule, I can know that just like these days I'm doing calls between this time, maybe or maybe not. But then it gets approved and you can pay all through that, just right through that one button. So it's pretty easy.
That's on your TRG Home Concepts page.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. There's a book now, on my Instagram page when you're on my main profile.
Johnny, you got one on your Here's Johnny. Is that right?
You got it. Yeah. My personal page. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's fun. I've been doing it since mid-August. And, the crazy thing is though, you book an hour, I go longer. This is trying to show value. You and I talked about this. And then I find myself texting with everyone on like a regular basis, being like, they're so excited that they did some of the steps we talked about. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all right, now just keep banging with the next one, or talk to this person, or dial this in. And it is honestly through like, COVID's been tough and, work's nonstop and all that stuff. It's this little boost of, we used to get it when you get likes on IG when it was in the beginning, like, oh, I got a bunch of likes. It was like that little kind of overwhelming feeling. Same thing that, you're helping somebody that needs it, that's been where you've been or it's going where you're going. And it's super helpful and it feels really good to give back. And that's why we're all doing this. It's why we're on the podcast. So it's kind of the next generation of that. And like you said, Tyler, taking that solid hour and, I do it twice a week and just try and drill down on it and really give someone 60 to 80 minutes of my time that's dialed in and ram-packed with information. I usually follow up with a text of, what we talked about. So that way, in case they miss it,
Yeah. I mean, I have to, I guess, set up something where I feel like I'm providing 100% of myself and kind of fulfilling that value, because people are footing good money to spend time and kind of pick your brain. So at that point, I'm not gonna get on a phone call while I'm in the middle of work and doing 2 other things and the kids are screaming. So it's like if you set this up, it'll force me to step away and really devote myself uninterrupted, which I think is important.
And I think that, that speaks to how it's mutually beneficial. I agree, John. It's like, it's super fun. It's rewarding, but I find it to be super, rewarding on my side as well as theirs. And, one thing, and you kind of alluded to it, is that one of the reasons that, obviously we do the podcast, we do the podcast, but also these calls, is that it's cool to work with a coach and, long term. And it's cool to talk to people that have retired from this industry and ask them for advice and they can reflect back. But when people are reflecting back 40 years of being in the career, it's oftentimes difficult to relate to what you're going through today. So you find that person that's a year ahead of you, 2 years, 5 years ahead of you, and they're at this point in their career where you can reflect back. It might have been as soon as yesterday or a year ago, but it's so much more relevant in their life that they can speak, in my opinion, so much more specifically to it.
They can speak freely because you're in it. You're in the trenches with them, and you can.
You're learning together.
Language. Yeah, and they can still talk to their significant other or their coworker or whatever, but people don't relate the way that we do. That like, hey, so and so is not paying. What are my next steps? Or how do I manage cash flow? What are the issues? Yeah, I've been through that. I've done that. Blah blah. There's all these things that you're not judging someone. You're just having this camaraderie and this conversation over something that we all want to solve.
Right.
And having resources and doing that. And it's funny, I'll be on calls and I'll be like, you know what you should do? You should schedule a call with Tyler. I'm not saying that because we want to feed each other's thing, but it's like, I love the perspective that you two bring. So like all the time, I'm on the phone with someone and I'm like, you know what? You should really jump on so-and-so's page. And, Nick's got a whole different approach than me. So you should go take a piece of that. I know you have a call this week, Nick, with someone I had a call with last week.
I just talked to him yesterday.
Oh, did you? Yes.
Yeah.
It's
He's like I already talked to John. I'm like, then what are you talking to me for?
No, but it's because of that reason.
No,
It's like you have a whole different perspective. And I think that's what's awesome about the podcast and being able to do this is that, it's that perfect mix of giving back and there's so many people that need it. And I mean, we all need mentors. I think that was the beauty of Instagram in the beginning is that you could connect with people that are like-minded with similar business and similar, ideas and goals and feel like you're not alone. And now that we can sit down and talk with somebody freely about all their issues and try and help dial them in. And it's amazing how I've been doing it for years for free and it's been fun. It's just taking that focus where if I don't value my time, same thing we talk about with our clients, if I don't value it, then no one is going to.
Yeah.
Right. So with that being said, I also added the link to my Instagram. It's actually on the NS Builders page right now, but also a quick little plug, nickschiffer.com we launched, which has a bunch of our blogs, but also the booking link on there. Guys, we appreciate you listening each week. This podcast is brought to you by Duration Molding and Millwork. Considering a painted wood siding on your next project because you love that look? So do we. Let us show you why architects, builders, and homeowners are switching to Duration for the same great look, but with a much faster installation and far superior performance. To learn more about Duration Poly Ash products, please visit their website at durationmillwork.com.